Yeah, it's that one. Rock it backwards. Rock it back.
There we go. Evening, members. Thank you and welcome to this evening's meeting. Item 1, announcements by the Mayor and Chief Executive. First of all, apologies for the delay. We were experiencing technical difficulties. Thank you for your patience and understanding. Announcements by Chief Executive. Just got a couple of announcements. So first of all, I know the whole Chamber would wish to join me in expressing our sympathies with His Majesty the King following the news of his cancer diagnosis. Our thoughts are, of course, with His Majesty and his family, and we'd all wish to send him our very best wishes for the successful treatment and a speedy recovery. On your desks, you should have received information about volunteering and recognition of volunteers in our wards, and you should have also received that information by email. So if you're able to come together as a ward for the 3 councillors in each ward or individually from the ward, if you could put forward a suggestion for a volunteer or volunteer group that you think should be recognised for their achievements in your area. So you can do that and send it back to the Civic Office. All the information is on the email and on the information that you have received on your desk. I'd like to thank members who attended the memorial service of the M62 coach bombing 50th anniversary last Sunday, and I'd also like to thank Councillor Bolt for his help and assistance in helping to organise that along with others. Item 2, apologies for absence. Councillor Sokal.
Mr. Mayor, apology from Councillor Nahid Meda, Councillor Elizabeth Reynolds, Councillor Masood Ahmed, and Councillor Gwen Low, and Councillor Mus Khan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal. Councillor Smith.
Mr. Mayor, we have apologies from Councillor Donald Firth and Councillor Melanie Stephen. Thank you.
Any other apologies for absence? Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 17th of January 2024 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded?
I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Dadd. Can we vote?
Labour amendment for the previous meeting, which was changed on the night without the acknowledgement of the Labour group. As we all know, 8 months ago, under the previous leadership, there was also misinformation at that time, and there was a motion of vote of no confidence against that leader. So,
Councillor Anwar, if it's a point of order to do with the minutes of the last meeting, there was a motion, and that was amended by the Labour group, as far as I remember. And it wasn't changed.
It was circulated.
It was circulated. Okay. Not a valid point of order, unfortunately. Please, can we please vote by a show of hands, please? Councillor Bolt, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I did press my button. Having read the minutes of the last meeting and a key topic covering 8 pages, there seems to be one key item which I can't find, and I thought our colleague was going to raise that. During that debate, Councillor Anwar resigned from the Labour group. Shouldn't that be noted in the minutes as an action? When a member resigns, it's a significant thing for this council. I notice he's still within the bosom of the Labour Party, but I think he has resigned, and it should be noted.
It was, as far as I understand, that was an issue for the Labour group and not for council, and that needs to be done in writing to the leader of the council. Thank you. Are there any other? If it's a point of order, if it's not a point of order, then can you stand up, please?
I did send an email on the night. I've got it here. It was as soon as I resigned, I sent an email to the leader of my resignation straight away.
Thank you for resigning then. Can we please vote by a show of hands, please, to move that the minutes are recorded as a correct record? All those in favour? And those against? No. So it's carried. They are a correct record. Declarations of interest. Members who have any disclosable pecuniary interests which would prevent them from discussing or voting on any item should disclose their interests now. Are there any interests to declare? If there are, please complete the appropriate paperwork. Item 5, petitions from members of the Council. Are there any petitions from members of the Council? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Petition to Kirklees Council opposing permit price charge increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. Are there any further petitions? Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a further petition opposing induction of parking charges in Murfield, which the residents and shopkeepers feel will be detrimental to their business, and would ask that the Council do not approve this action. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Are there any further petitions from members of the Council? If not, in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 9.3, I direct that the subject matter of the petitions be referred to the appropriate Service Director for investigation. Item 6, deputations and petitions from members of the public. We have one deputation this evening. Can I please invite Friends of Batley Library to present their deputation? Welcome to the meeting. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation to Council.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to the Council. My name is Steve McGrath and I'm Vice Chairman of the Friends of Batley Library. This is a deputation concerning the proposed relocation of the library service from the Batley Library to the Town Hall to save on the running costs of 2 public buildings and to raise money from the sales of the library building. But this fails to understand the significance of the library building to Batley and the pivotal role it plays in our community. In reality, Batley Library is so much more than those 2 words. I hope in the next few minutes to convey to you the ethos of our library building and its value to Batley and Kirklees. Historically, the Batley Carnegie Library building was funded by the Carnegie Trust at the beginning of the 20th century as a free public library, accessible to everyone on land owned by the Ackroyd Trust and apparently released for the sole purpose of the Carnegie Library. That's a key point. After an attempt to build a new town hall had failed through lack of money and a damage from a fire, Batley Borough refurbished their current location in the former Mechanics Institute, adding a new frontage onto the marketplace. The Market Hall clock, which was left standing after demolition of that building in 1900, had been saved for the new town hall. So the council cheekily approached Carnegie again, saying that they had a spare and quite large clock that would look quite splendid on his new, yet-to-be-built library. Carnegie, admiring this cheek, agreed and paid extra for the renovation of the clock and bells and the addition of a clock tower, which makes the building of historical and architectural importance globally. Within the conservation area of listed buildings, the Carnegie Library with its massive clock tower is obviously the most impressive one, central to the overall impression. It's the very heart and absolute pride of Batley and was the chosen location for BBC's World Book Day live lesson broadcast in 2023. Still relevant today. It needs to stay the vibrant library that it is. I said vibrant. We have the 3rd highest library footfall in the whole of Kirklees, which is growing again after COVID, even with less council-led services and partners using the building through funding costs. The growth is due to some excellent staff and volunteers going over and above and the receptive community. We have over 80 to 100 children and family members each week for Lego Club alone. In addition to the usual library, borrow books and returns, newspapers, IT, internet access and printing, photocopying services, we also have an important and comprehensive local history collection and a unique digital archive of photos maintained weekly for over 15 years now by our volunteer Val Asquith. A multicultural library users community has built up naturally over years and is precious, drawing the communities together organically day to day, year after year. And these communities go beyond the traditional ethnicity, religious lines. which is becoming all the more important against an increasingly fractured and troubled national and international backdrop. We are very much together in this building, a cohesive hub, and Joe Cox would be proudly singing our praises. Kirklees have a great cohesion team, or had, but it happens in this building naturally. We serve our community with regular rhyme times, story times, nursery through to high school class visits, Lego club as mentioned, craft club, trading card club, crochet group, long COVID support, rugby memories group, and dare I say book sales of discarded stock. We are a designated safe place, a sanctuary, a warm place with soup and rolls. Our library community includes young, old, employed, unemployed, able-bodied, those with disabilities, the lonely, struggling, marginalised, outgoing, or just plain happy, across all areas of Batley with no discrimination. No other public facility caters for this complete cross-section of people who come to the library because they genuinely want to. And if things aren't good, there is Andy's Man Club. Here is Thomas Blakely to speak.
Thank you. Andy's Man Club Batley moved to the library in late July. Our old venue was only getting an average of 17 men. After the venue changed to the library, we have more than doubled. That's because now we are in the heart of Batley. The safety the library provides men, who are often at the lowest point of their lives, is staggering. The library provides us with a safe space that allows men to open up and feel comfortable when sharing their problems. This doesn't just affect the men who come. It affects their partners, children, and parents. Without this, who knows what could have happened. The proposed plans, if moved to the town hall, offer Andy's Man Club Batley a room with a maximum capacity of 30 people. On January the 15th, we reached a club record of 38 men. These men came needing support and a safe place to open up and share their problems. The library provided a warm home for these vulnerable men to express themselves. In this proposed room, we would have had to turn away 8 of those men. That is 8 men with families. That is 8 men who needed us. I know from me personally, I would not have been able to turn those men away. Would you? In the library, we can cater for more than 38 men, and we will save more lives.
So the Carnegie Library building is special. It's more than just a service point. It provides a sense of pride, belonging, continuity, safety, hope, and history. It's these abstract concepts which are vital to civic pride, public morale, and people caring about the area and wider community. We would suggest that it would be cheaper, could be cheaper, and more cost-effective to keep the library building and dispose of the town hall building. Batley doesn't need a town hall, as Kirklees Council is centred here in Huddersfield, and Dewsbury Town Hall is the preferred venue for shows. But it definitely needs its library in its right building, not shoehorned into a sterile, lesser version of itself. Everything is in place in the Carnegie Library building. It is fit for purpose. It always has been. It was given to us by Andrew Carnegie, and we cherish it. You're all invited to come and visit us to see for yourselves. Bring your own biscuits. And thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to wait there for the response. Thank you. Thank you for the... All right, thank you. Thank you for your deputation. And invite Councillor Turner to respond, please.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Mr McGrath and the other friends, thank you very much for coming along this evening. Just to let you know, I was there the other week and I got free biscuits and a bun. Just one bun. Just one bun. Looks like I had more, but I know. Anyway, thank you for your deputation and your warm words about our library service in Batley. I totally agree with you. It is a safe and welcoming place. As I said, I spent an enjoyable 3 hours there with you and the Friends group the other Saturday morning. And I saw for myself its vibrancy, its diversity, and the fantastic Lego Club, and the wonderful impact it has for the people of Batley. But these things do not occur because of the building, but due to the staff and the amazing volunteers. And should we make the very tough decision to move the service to Town Hall, I'm sure that all the great things the volunteers and staff do will continue and even grow and develop. As we have seen this when we have moved library services to other buildings in the past, it can reinvigorate communities and allow new ideas to flourish. We are clear that the Town Hall is a different building to the library, and it's acknowledged that moving would not be without challenges and changes, but it would mean that we can extend our offer and also add community benefit to the town. If the decision to move the library is taken, then officers from across the council will work with all stakeholders, including the local community, to ensure that the Town Hall becomes a true community location by maximising the amount of accommodation for use by the public. If the library again were to move to the town hall, the library would offer 3 large community spaces of between 63 square metres and 110 square metres, which can be accessed independently from an accessible core, and therefore it offers more flexibility than the existing library, where access to the first 2 floors, public rooms, is limited due to the location of the lift. Again, if, as the library is proposed to move, and it does move, we will absolutely work with the Friends of Batley Library on the use of the space in the town hall. Both that designated as library space and our community groups, including Andy's Man Club, and I can assure you, if you've got 50 members, if you've got 100 members, we will find space in there for you because you do an absolutely fantastic job for the men of Kirklees. I don't know where we'd be without Andy's Man Club. That it's a brilliant organisation. Said, get 200 people. I will guarantee you will have space there for however many people turn up to your events. So those spaces can be used. But as I say, I will guarantee that we'll find you space if you need to grow the group. I hope you don't have to grow the groups. I hope we can eventually find a solution for the problems against men faced with suicide risk. Any move would only work if the community stakeholders were involved in the project and part of that process. If the library moves, it will complement the town hall's use as a venue, which is an essential part of the holistic offer across Kirklees, enabling smaller amateur dramatic groups a place to rehearse and perform. This is particularly apparent with the many small amateur dramatic groups being rehomed because of the temporary closure of Cleckheaton Town Hall. Batley Town Hall is a bespoke concert-stroke performance hall with all the required infrastructure to support this size of performance, which is unlike the larger town halls in Kirklees, which is Dewsbury and Huddersfield Town Hall. So those spaces are not viable for them, so some people like the smaller space. Space usage will be different in the town hall, but with increased accessibility, both the spaces and opening times, the town hall will offer at least 6 days a week, with 5 of those being open in the region of 12 plus hours per day if required and demand is there. Community feedback from the recent place standards engagement in Batley highlights that the community feel that council-owned buildings in Batley are underutilised, with the potential of the historic buildings being largely untapped. Comments also suggest that residents and users felt that the buildings could serve them better by being more flexible. By redirecting resources to improve the town hall services, it could enhance its ability to engage with the local community effectively. Whilst we consider that the town hall can host a library, should the decision be taken to move it, the library is not currently able to host the sort of events and performances that the town hall can. Recognising the potential of the 2 currently underutilised spaces and focusing the council's use on one, the town hall, and releasing the library building for development would also further stimulate the local economy and unlock potential significant benefits for both residents and business. I can assure you, we spoke about this the other week, there's been a lot of discussion over a long period of time about all the options and challenges of having 2 historic buildings so close to each other that are underutilised in these very difficult times. Having to make these difficult decisions is not what I signed up for, but we need to spend our limited resources to ensure that we can make the best use of our assets and provide spaces that are well used and best serve all the community in which they are situated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Thank you very much for attending the meeting. Are there any public petitions? No. Item 7, public question time. There are 2 public questions this evening. Can I please invite David Heathcote to ask his first question? Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Heathcote. Please, can you ask your question?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As the council is required to keep a separate account of income and expenditure in respect of designated parking spaces, including parking charges, would the Cabinet member tell me what was the financial position of that separate account before the decision to increase car parking charges by £2.6 million, including information on the projected position in 12 months' time, and specifically, what will the increased fees and any surplus be spent on? And secondly, will funds or surpluses raised from car parks, for example in Honley and Meltham, be used for local projects in these areas?
Please can I invite Councillor Butt to respond, please?
Good evening, David, and thank you for your question. So the accounts for parking over the last 3 years, excluding IAS 19 pension figures, which are excluded from government RO forms, are as follows. 2020 to 2021, a loss of 1.97 million. 2021 to 2022, a loss of 301,000, and 22 to 23, a surplus of 299,000. Now, the current forecast for 23-24 is a 700,000 projected loss. The parking budget sits within the Director of Highways and Street Scene budget. Therefore, any surplus contributes to highways maintenance of parks and open spaces, works and other allowable works.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Do you have a supplementary, Mr Heathcote?
Yes, thank you. I did ask in my questions, though, whether surpluses raised from those car parks in those areas will be spent in those local areas. So it would be really nice to have an answer on that, please. But my supplementary is that in order to project an additional £2.6 million requirement or uplift in that funding, the Council must have done a financial impact assessment and know how this will affect demand on car parks by local residents. So I spoke with small businesses in Honley, where I work, and also in Meltham, who are very worried about the impact of these charges on their businesses. So did the Council carry out such an impact assessment? And what can the Cabinet say to reassure local businesses that this decision will not negatively impact their business?
Thank you. Councillor Butt.
So the Council haven't made the decision yet for parking in Honley and Meltham at this time. The decision will be made following a statutory consultation, which is due to be launched before the end of February this year. That's your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butt. Thank you, Mr Heathcote, for attending the meeting and asking your questions. Yeah. Councillor Scott.
Would it be possible to bring item 12 forward, because we've got other things that we'll be talking about, the celebration of Kirklees, and I think it's really important that we discuss the motions submitted by Councillor Kendrick.
Is that seconded? Councillor Davis, all those in favour? This is in favour of bringing forward the motion. Yeah, that's carried. Thank you. So we move to item 12. Motion submitted in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 14 as to recognising care experience as a protective characteristic. Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I recommend this motion to colleagues in the Chamber tonight. And the reasons for that are, as much as, I'll give a little bit of background, there are often traumatic episodes that lead to a child or a young person coming into care, but coming into care itself can be a traumatic episode. Children and young people, even us, don't tend to like to be singled out as being different, but being looked after is different from the general children and young people population. You know, from their peers, where's your mum and dad? Why can't you come for a sleepover? And who else? Which other children and young people move home and schools quite a few times, and it does happen. However, let's be clear, this isn't the child or young person's fault. Nowadays, women fleeing domestic violence are seen as victims, survivors, who need support and help and are not at fault. I'm afraid to say that very often young people who are looked after by the local authority are not viewed in the same way, are viewed as if it is their fault. When residential care homes for children are being opened, it's not uncommon for local communities to raise issues saying, oh, this will cause a rise in antisocial behaviour. These young people are being placed there because it is assessed as being the best environment for them to meet their needs, not because they're delinquent or bad. And I suppose I'll get you to reflect, as I reflect a bit, about which of our children, our grandchildren, worry about where they're going to live when they reach 18. They might be saying, am I going to get to university? But it's not the same as, where the heck am I going to live? And when our adult children find that life comes along and bites them, they, you know, a loss of job, a leak in the home, a car accident, illness and so on, they still have family to turn to for advice, for help and support, and if we're really unlucky, for our money as well. Care leavers can be quite isolated, lack confidence, suffer anxiety without that ring of family support and connections to the community. They do have a personal advisor to advise and help them, but that is not family. It doesn't have the same strength. Education may have been disrupted because of moves and changes. Education may not have been as strongly embraced as it perhaps might have been, and because of trauma and still that's still being dealt with. And a lack of qualifications can be viewed as failure, but they need the help and support to build the successful lives that they deserve. Our care leavers have much to contribute to the community and in building their adult lives, but they need us to find opportunities, open doors, and encourage and support them. So, Mr. Mayor, I recommend this motion to the Council tonight.
Is that seconded?
Mr. Mayor?
1 second, Councillor Bald.
I was willing to second it.
No.
Thank you, Councillor Bald. Councillor Scott?
Yeah, yes, I rise to second this motion, Mr. Mayor. We have to ensure that the young people in care and care leavers are not discriminated against. This is our duty. We have to ensure that their lived experiences are considered and help shape our decisions. This allows us to improve their lives, their housing needs, their health, their education, their employment, and all the inequalities that need to be addressed there. By adopting these protected characteristics, we will put care experienced people on a level footing with others, and in society, it's more than what they do deserve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Are there any comments on this motion? Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, happy to support this motion. I think those of us with children will know that they don't disappear when they reach 18. You continue to have a responsibility beyond that time, and so it is with Kirklees. We have an ongoing responsibility up to the age of 25. Actually, that's what Kirklees has, an ongoing responsibility. We probably have, who knows, for those of us who have children. And so there's, I mean, one of the things that we've got to do here is realise our power. And we are potentially, as Kirklees, a very, very powerful parent. We have apprenticeships that we can offer. We have, we ensure that care leavers, as our children are able to get housing, and we're in a good position to do that in a way that often parents aren't. We've got good connections with our partners to be able to help people along, and I think that transition from children to adults is really important to make sure that we are that we get that right. And I think Kirklees, to a large extent, from my experience in the Children's Scrutiny Panel, is getting that right. But it's one of those things where you can't leave it alone for a moment. It's got something that's got to be completely revived, because it could be all right one year and not the next. And so continuing to have a focus on looked after children, continuing to see are they getting the best service is something that we can't let go. We just got to continue doing it year after year. It's part of the job.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Lawson.
I'll be brief, but I did want to rise to support this motion. I would have been happily taken part in a joint motion on this one. Yeah, it has been accepted by, I think, over 50 councils now. and the campaign has been going for a little time, and I'm absolutely sure that we must be part of that groundswell. We must be part of that voice. If we want to add our voices to the lobbying that has to take place at government level to make sure that those changes are made, to make the changes that we want to make in this motion, actually give it teeth and make it, enshrine it in law, then I think that we have to do that today. I did discuss this briefly with officers a few months ago, but it obviously took a different path through council, but it would have been nice to have a chat about this. Yeah, so our group will fully support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Richard Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would also like to speak in support of this motion. I think that the comments that have been made so far have been very good ones, and I don't have much of anything particularly different to say. I do agree that care experienced people face challenges, stigma and disadvantage, and whilst many do show remarkable resilience, there are things that we as a council can do to ensure that these challenges are minimised, and my group supports this as an aspiration. In particular, following on from recent discussions in this meeting regarding the role of the corporate parent, I would re-emphasise the point that it is incumbent upon us all to ensure that we provide the best possible care as an authority for those children and young people who do not have the family support that most of us take for granted. We as councillors do have a moral and a legal duty to do so, and I am sure that I speak for each of us in this chamber when I say that this is part of the role that is both rewarding and also among the most important. In terms of the resolution, I do think there is a little bit of lack of detail regarding the specifics, but I'm probably splitting hairs a little, using words like recognise does not really commit to anything tangible. When it says that the council will treat care experience as if it were a protected characteristic, I would suggest it needs an expansion on what this will mean in terms of providing opportunities to apply for roles, benefits, extra support, etc. But broadly, I think we're all aligned on this. And I think the figure that Councillor Lawson alluded to, I believe there were 57 local authorities have already adopted care experience as a protected characteristic. I could be wrong about that figure. And I think the Leeds is in the process of doing so as well. So I think it would be a sensible move for Kirklees to join in this groundswell, as it was called. So that's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was brought up in a stable and loving home, and once me and my siblings were growing up, my dad chose to foster and took in 5 siblings at a very young age, and through that commitment then took on a special guardianship order and has seen that through for the last 15 years, providing support and love for those vulnerable children. My sister has also fostered for the last 10 years. I've seen firsthand some of the challenges that these children go through and the way that they can be dropped and forgotten when they turn 16 or 18. I commend this motion. I know it's been said about previous motions, well, why are we debating this? Why is this coming before council? It's not going to make any difference. It's not going to change any laws. But I think you see, once you get a groundswell of support from the ground up, through our communities, through our councils, and then another council, and then 50 councils and 100 councils, we can create a groundswell which can then be escalated up and hopefully become enshrined in legislation. So thank you for bringing this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. No other comments, right of reply. Councillor Kendrick.
Very much, Mr Mayor. It is gratifying to see such support across the chamber, and Councillor Cooper is absolutely right. We are a powerful parent. It is in our power to make a difference, and we're also, as I said last time, the richest parent in Kirklees. You know, we need to remember that. And part of that voice nationally, as Councillor Lawson says, is important. But in the meantime, and Councillor Richard Smith, you know, was wanting more detail. I like his appetite. He always wants to know what next, what more. And I did say to you last time, we will be providing some training and information to all councillors. What can we as ward councillors do? And it's those things like, what voluntary roles do we know in the ward that might be suitable and open to a young person? What Saturday jobs are there? What work experience might there be locally? What training opportunities are there? Jobs and so on. And fundraising. Fundraising to help support celebrations for care leavers, the Christmas lunch. How many of you have children and grandchildren who spent Christmas Day on their own? Because I can tell you some of our care leavers did, not because we didn't offer a lunch, but they lacked the confidence to go and so on. I spent a long time trying to persuade one young woman to go, but she spent Christmas Day on her own. Those who went, we scrabbled about and found some great sponsorship, but it was a scrabble about to give a good experience with some comfort, if you like, arms around, presents, a good meal, a bit of social life on a day that is really significant. So there will be information coming out. I hope you look out for it. I know we can't always get to trainings when they happen. There are going to be some things that each group, there's an offer going out for somebody to visit each group to do some, but we will follow that on with more training. But can I say thank you for the support in the chamber tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. We will now go to the vote by a show of hands. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? It's carried. Thank you. We'll now go back to item 8. Minutes of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. This is to receive for information the minutes of West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The minutes are here for noting. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on page 27, there's a couple of items in the minutes there to do with the mass transit. Paragraph 54, Mass Transit Vision 2040, and 55, Mass Transit Approach to Placemaking Design Philosophy. I have asked about this before in Council, and it seems to me that there's so much going on now at the Combined Authority to do with this mass transit, that really the time has come when surely we should be having some kind of debate or key discussion or just some information imparted about it, because I'm pretty sure it will affect most of our wards in some way. So perhaps we could just think about that for the future. I'd be grateful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Councillor Hall, for that. I did say in the last council that that was one of the things, as well as the evolution, that we should be discussing what's going on at Wicker within this chamber, because it does impact on every ward across here. So I've taken the point on board. I have made that commitment. I have spoke to the Chief Exec, and it is something that we will be bringing.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Hall, any? Thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
Yeah, just checking, is the mic work? Yeah, it is. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I have a request to the leader and to our WICA representatives, particularly those on the Transport Committee. The Combined Authority minutes outline the ambition for a mass transit system for West Yorkshire. Mass transit has been talked about for decades by politicians, both locally and nationally, of all political persuasions. The reason why the ambition of mass transit has remained is that everyone recognises that fast, efficient transport links for a region of our size would be a game changer. My predecessor, Pete McBride, never failed to emphasise that the vitality of Kirklees is dependent on our transport links to the rest of the region and the wider country. On this, he was absolutely right, but this mass transit system won't start until 2028 and won't be finished until 2040 at the earliest. Our constituents are being failed today. All of us have seen the proposals from Arriva which impact bus services across Kirklees. In Dalton, the 260 and 261 services, which run through Kirkheaton, facing the chop, which would effectively cut off the village in the evening and on Sundays. This follows first service changes, which also cease in the evening from Dalton, like the 372, should I say. It's like the old saying goes, you're waiting for one bus and then two are cut at once. The recent proposed cuts have been put down to low passenger numbers. That's the symptom, but not the problem. Arriva have been notified regularly by councillors and local residents that their buses are missing and sometimes not even stopping for waiting passengers. How can people depend on such an unreliable service? If you live in Dalton and are wanting to travel in the evening, public transport is no longer an option. Public transport which the public can't access. As passionate as I believe in a mass transit network for West Yorkshire, first we must fix our existing broken public transport network. A huge number of our residents depend on our buses to access our town centres, to go to work, to doctor's appointments, to the hospital, on day trips and to attend these council meetings as well. Every pillar of this council, which we will be looking at next month in the budget, is inexorably impacted by transport. Our green ambitions require less dependency on cars and more on public transport. Our regeneration plans aim to attract visitors to our home who will come by public transport. Our children and vulnerable adults, many of whom are from low-income backgrounds, rely on public transport to get around, and new housing developments will bring new commuters. Everything we do or hope to do requires strong transport links if we are to succeed. And right now we are being failed. Failed by providers who are putting their profits ahead of their passengers, and in the last 10 years, 560 million has been paid in dividends from Arriva's bus division to their parent company, Deutsche Bahn. Last year, First Group made 100 million in profits. And I haven't even mentioned the train operators who record profits while demonising their lowest paid staff who have the gall to ask for fair pay. All that profit made on the back of commuters from places like Dalton who are now being forgotten and cut off, putting shareholders before passengers. We are being taken for a ride and not the one we actually want. Will the leader and our Wyker Transport Committee representatives please put the plight of commuters in Dalton and across our district to Mayor Brabin and push for an end to the failed deregulated system? The Mayor recently consulted on the future of buses. It's time to follow the lead of Manchester and Liverpool and move towards franchising. Franchising will be a massive win for the region. We would set the fares, the tickets and the routes and will ensure no commuters are left behind. Franchising today and mass transit tomorrow, and the people of West Yorkshire will at long last have a transport network fit for purpose. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Can I just ask members to keep the conversations to a minimum and be respectful for those people who are trying to speak, as they would respect you when you speak as well. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. That was deeply appreciated. And I've got to tell you in this chamber, we are still committed to the combined authority, mass transit, the best franchise services, should it be, for across all the communities. It's not just one communities, we're talking from rural, all over. So I've taken the points on board. I will arrange for something to come back because I think it's clear that we do need this debate. We do need this conversation. So, Councillor Hawkins, I hear you. Everything you said is absolutely right. And it's about doing the best for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Hawkins, are you okay with that? Yep. Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staying on the topic tonight of mass rapid transit, the Spen Valley Greenway is being considered as one of the mass transit corridors, and as Councillor Hall has said, this is going to be an issue which affects all of our wards. The issue there is that recently a company called Railway Pass Limited, a limited company with very close relationships with Sustrans, sold off what was formerly the access to Heckman White Railway Station at the side of the bus yard. I think it went for about £70,000. So therefore, that's compromising access to the Spen Valley Greenway. And if, as we're told, the mass rapid transit is coming forward, and if the Greenway corridor is looked at as that, then this seems to be something that an opportunity both this council, Wyker and others have missed, that we've now lost one of the key access points to the former railway station, adjacent to the bus depot, and with a platform already in place for access. So I wonder what the ward members in Heckman White looked at when this was up for sale. Been advertised with Pew for a long time, who seem to be selling off quite a lot of assets. They recently sold the Wortley Curve in Leeds which Network Rail bought back. The railway pass limiter was given lots of what was at that time determined unusable railway land when all the railway lands were privatised. So they were given land at one time, and now they're selling it back to the rail companies, which seems to be something insidious in this. So we should have had a look at this, and I wonder if the leader was aware of this at any time, and if it was raised in a meeting. Issues have been talked about, the interaction with the Transport Committee, and you're quite right, Councillor Hawkins, that there should be interaction and there should be accountability. This council has a spokesman on behalf of the Transport Committee, part of whose remit, and within the SRA, is to organise a minimum of 2 public meetings a year. During Councillor Butt's time, he didn't organise one. So you're talking about waiting for buses to come, waiting for public meetings under the district spokesman was worse. Councillor Anwar had assumed that role, and I'm sure he was looking forward to organising a meeting before recently that post was taken off him. So,
Councillor Anwar, thank you. We'll just have one at a time.
Perhaps the leader could tell us who is now the spokesman to whom we can hold accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, wow, Martin, what a plethora of information. Perhaps you'd like to come and join me at this side, and then we can get this strategy together. I hear what you're saying about Spen Valley, and a lot of the negotiations that have gone on, I was not privy to, and I think you know that, so we're not going to play games and quote companies' names in this chamber tonight, because it wouldn't be right. Regarding who's on the Transport Committee, I wouldn't worry about that, because we always replace. So we now have Councillor McLaughlin, and I know he's going to do an absolutely outstanding job. And there will be meetings, and I'm sure you do go to the Combined Authority and no meetings, so it's not about one-upmanship. We're not knowing more than you. We're not hiding things, and Heckman White councillors do the best for their ward, and if they are aware about things, they will have had some input, no doubt, but I cannot discuss any negotiations between the Combined Authority, what they've done, or whatever any separate company's done. So I thank you for your questions. If you want to take it outside the chamber after, I'm more than willing to meet you. But at this moment in time, I think we've given you your answer.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Bolt, do you have a supplementary?
I welcome your opportunity. Perhaps we can see you in the county.
Thank you. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Comments around the question. I think if we're on mass transit, then that's the way we're going. It would be really good to have a conversation at some stage about proper solutions to this, and not just a mass transit, but an integrated transport strategy using all forms. Walking, cycling, car users. I mean, there's some people who need to do that for reasons of access and disability, need to use a vehicle, and actually freeing up the roads for them to be able to do that in appropriate circumstances is great. I just think we need, I think our group has been supportive of a move towards franchising. We've seen how well that has worked in other regions and other parts of the world. Sometimes we look at European cities and their public transport network and think it's all publicly run. Actually, often it is franchising. The city or the town sets what it is, and private companies run it in the way that people want them to do. I think we need to be careful about blaming some of the transport companies for what's happening. Using the bus or the train or a tram needs to be a choice that we make. And I've found that, and I've been an enforced bus user in the last few weeks. And what I realise is, if the car was in the drive, that was my preferred mode of transport, no matter how easy it was to use the bus. I've got my bus ticket to go home tonight, so I would appreciate a 9 o'clock finish. But I think it's easy for us to tap into the argument that it's too difficult to do stuff. And what I would encourage all of us to do as public representatives is to have a go, to get out, Google Maps, whatever, and see actually how long would it take me to get from home to the council meeting on the bus or to another meeting. Because what it does is, for me, is two things. It allows me to be thinking about, not to experience the stress of driving. I can think about other things. I can prepare what I'm going to. And yes, it does take longer, but that time is well spent. And I think we often talk about those people who have to use buses and speak about their needs and everything, but actually to experience that ourselves is a really important thing. And I remember Councillor Annie Smith standing up in this chamber and saying, well, people moan about buses, but it's often the people who don't use them. And she said she didn't think it was about whether it was on time or not. They just didn't want to be, using that mode of transport. And again, Christine Iredale, former councillor and mayor, was a really good example of, that was her first surgery of the day. The bus from Millsbridge into town and either to the Merry England or Valencia as it was then. She spoke to people, she saw people. So yes, it is difficult, particularly the places where your bus is only 1 hour, and if they're missing you, and Dalton might be one of those places. But let's see what we can do and head towards a transport strategy. 2040 is probably the right time scale that works for everybody, and everybody chooses to do it because it's what they want to do rather than because they have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. Do you wish to respond, Councillor Scott? No. Councillor Pinnock, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is a great danger that I stand up here and sound like a bit of a Jeremiah. Yes, I might well be. But I think one of the important issues that we have to remember is that, yes, we want a world-class transport system in West Yorkshire. Why wouldn't you? The trouble is that compared with some other places, we haven't got the infrastructure for it. So it is going to cost, and this is the bit where I sound like a Jeremiah, or Jeremiah's, whatever they were, friends. It's going to cost an awful lot of money. And I put this to the mayor when we had, at the scrutiny committee, had questions, and she said, oh, don't be so unambitious, she said. But you can't get away from the fact that compared with some other places, indeed, compared with absolutely, it's going to cost an awful lot of money. Because we do want the sort of public transport system that we see in some other countries, for instance. I will quote Switzerland as an example, but there, even if it's not provided by the state has a finger in what actually happens. And so franchising, yes, I think that is a good thing to proceed with because it's better than the alternatives. But don't run away with the idea that franchising will allow you to provide bus services or transport services absolutely everywhere. There will still be a cost issue when you're trying to do that in areas of lower demand. That is one issue that you've got to sort out. The scrutiny committee at WICA the Transport Scrutiny Committee has been looking at that issue, what's called demand responsive transport. It sounds very, very grand, but it could include things like the hopper bus that we have in the Spen Valley, which runs on a route, but it stops anywhere that's safe. That seems to me like a really good idea. And we should be doing more of it, far more of it. So, to some extent, these are random thoughts, but I think we do need to not let our ambition, which should be very great, run away too far with what we can do. Oh yes, I know there was something I wanted to talk about. The Spen Valley Greenway. The Spen Valley Greenway may not necessarily be the best place to put this, even though it's an old railway line. Because, of course, it's been turned into a greenway, which is used by, I don't know what the figures are, thousands and thousands of people on foot, on bikes, to some extent on horses. And so there would be a conflict, a very great conflict, I suspect, between different groups of people who would protect that. So you got to find another route. And what did I say just now about costing a lot of money? You might have to build a new route. So there are not easy choices to be made here. I'm just being a bit of a Jeremiah. So anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. And as I said before, we remain ambitious here in Kirklees, particularly on the infrastructure, because that's key. Infrastructure is key. And it's about listening to the voices of communities. And I hear what you're saying about Spen Valley Greenway. We're committed here in Kirklees to listening. So, and I think that at every point, whatever we develop on infrastructure, you should be consulted and have your say in everything. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Smage. Can I just ask members to involve themselves in the meeting? If they wish to have another meeting, they could perhaps do the courtesy of going outside. Thank you. Councillor Smage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Taylor. Thank you. Councillor Smage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add the voice to actually discussing our ambition in Kirklees for the public transport, both the mass transit system but also the integrated transport networks as well. I know there's been some changes in South Kirklees recently, but in North Kirklees we have a particular problem about getting a bus to the hospital, getting a bus to a health centre. And these are just as important to people as getting between places, so getting between Bradford and Dewsbury, Leeds, etc. But also on the infrastructure, if you get the bus from Leeds to Birkenshaw, for instance, Leeds have some lovely new bus stops. In fact, all their bus stops have lovely new tops on, and some have the electronic as well. We do have some electronic, but when you on the same bus route and you get into Kirklees, and it is very obvious you've changed authorities, because some of the bus stops you can't read that they are actually bus stops. You know, because it's a red pole and they've got an information thing on, but in actual fact they're so faded, etc., that you know, we really need new infrastructure as well. So I think we ought to talk about mass transit, we ought to talk about infrastructure, we ought to talk about access to health, but also what we ask developers for in relation to large developments. At the moment, they're asked for metro cards and they're asked for bus shelters, etc. But a bus shelter and metro cards are okay if you can get a bus that goes past the end of your road. And, you know, there's nothing to help with actually supporting bus services going forward. So I think we need a wide-ranging discussion and have some ambition for Kirklees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smage. I think everything you said is absolutely right. I think it should be a focused conversation in this chamber, because that's what it should be used for. So, yeah, I'll take away what you said and see if we can have a focused conversation in the chamber. And it's about your communities, not just what you think, it's your communities that you're feeding in about. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. There's no further questions. We'll move on to item 9, page 31, dates of council meetings 24-25, reference from Corporate Governance and Audit Committee. Councillor Homewood.
Thank you. I move that we approve the dates and times of the council meetings for the municipal year 2024-2025 as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Homewood. Is that seconded? Councillor Taylor.
Seconded and reserve the right.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are there any comments on this matter? Councillor Anthony Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems a little bizarre that we are so thin on the ground for a period of 6 or 7 months with council meetings. Why is a meeting scheduled for June, for example? I can understand April. May is effectively just a procedural meeting, and then only one in July, and then nothing till September. We've got practically 6 or 7 months where we've already effectively got one council meeting. So I just wonder why we've not considered having a meeting in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other comments? No? Councillor Holmes.
That comment. I also feel we don't have enough council meetings. We have a huge gap where there's very little time for us to bring anything to the executive. Accepting there's elections. We also had another meeting where the Mayor, Tracy Brabin, came, so that meeting was largely taken up by that. We don't have enough opportunity to challenge the executive, and given the circumstances we find ourselves in at the moment, I think that's more important than it's ever been.
Thank you. Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And without wanting to put your deputy under any pressure, reflecting the comments what my colleagues have said, there is the opportunity within council procedure rules that if an extra meeting is needed, members can request the Mayor. If the Mayor declines to call a meeting, 5 members can submit a petition and call a meeting. So, judging on what colleagues are saying, if there is issues in this period when a meeting is needed, I'm sure you'll find support across the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Cath Pinnock.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I was at the Corporate Audit and Governance meeting where this was originally discussed, and I raised at that meeting the issue of there not being a ordinary, as I call it, council meeting between, for instance, this year. So today, there will not now be an ordinary council meeting until July. And that seems to me, in the context of what this council does, which is call the executive to account, not acceptable. So in March we have a budget meeting where there's no opportunity for public questions or deputations. Quite rightly, I'm not challenging that. And then there's not then a meeting until the annual meeting in May, and that too is right. But then there's not then a meeting where we can call the executive to account until July. So there's a very long gap when things happen, stuff gets done, maybe car parking charges gets put in, and not a chance to challenge what the Cabinet are deciding. I did raise it at the Audit and Governance Committee, and the decision was that it would be referred to leaders for further discussion. So I'd quite like to hear what that discussion was.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to respond on that. We do have Cabinet meetings that do continue, and you're more than welcome to come to the Cabinet meetings. But very few members come to the Cabinet meeting. So can I suggest that you look at the time and effort that is put in for them meetings to be hosted with Cabinet and actually turn up? They've even accommodated for you to ask your questions virtually. So you can actually come online and do it virtually. So you don't actually have to be in the chamber. So please utilise that.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. As a regular attendee at Cabinet, fairly regularly, I've got to say. Yes, as councillors, we do get opportunity to do that. It's in the middle of the day, so the opportunity for the public to get involved and to bring deputations and public questions is limited. And I think we've all been talking a little bit too much about the councillors' opportunity to hold people to account here. I think the important bit is actually what residents should expect from how a council runs its business. And that should have, the residents should have that opportunity to see its council in action, how it makes its decisions on a more regular basis than once every 8 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to make very similar comments to Councillor Lawson. but there are also councillors who work during the day, which means they don't have the opportunity to get to meetings. So perhaps one thing that the administration could look at doing is perhaps varying the times of the cabinet meetings, so there are more opportunities. So in months where there isn't a council meeting, perhaps there's an opportunity of an evening meeting whereby perhaps then the public and all members have an opportunity to attend should they wish to. I just think it's something to take away and perhaps consider. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are there any other comments from members who haven't already spoken? No? Right of reply?
Yeah, thank you. Interesting discussion. I think the key points have been covered. I think the main thing, just looking at it overall, is that we have the same structure of meetings from last year in terms of the time that is allocated to holding the executive to account and key discussion items. There is, as has been pointed out, the opportunity to have additional council meetings if that is required. There's also cabinet meetings as well as other committees such as scrutiny committees that are going on throughout the period of the year. So I feel there is sufficient scrutiny. I think there is a question as to whether in the future we want to have different meetings or at different times, as has been discussed, but I think that probably needs a further, some more detailed investigation and looking at, to be honest, than right now. But yeah, that's all really I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the vote by show of hands. All those in favour? Those against? We'll divide it. Thank you. That is carried. We're going to, at this point, take a short break, and then when we return, we will start the key discussion, which needs to commence no later than 7 p.m, and then we will go to item 10. So a short break, and we'll resume, be back before 7. Thank you. Thank you, members. Welcome back. So we're going to move to the key discussion, item 11. Item 12. Is it item 11 or 12? 11. Mistake. Item 11, key discussion. Key discussion is in recognition of Kirklees reaching its 50-year milestone on the 1st of April 2024. This key discussion is an opportunity for councillors to celebrate the positive aspects of the communities that they represent. Can I please invite the Leader of the Council to introduce the discussion? Councillor Scott.
Mayor. In April, Kirklees will mark its Golden Jubilee. We were one of around 300 councils that were created in 1974. And I'm sure some of them councils will be patting themselves on the back over the coming months. But I don't want to do that this evening. I'd like to open tonight's debate by saying thank you. I want to thank the thousands of social workers who, over the past 50 years, have changed children's lives for the better in towns and villages across Kirklees. And the 1,000 more that have supported older people and people with disabilities with care and compassion and professionalism. I want to thank Kirklees teachers who have given generations of children many opportunities in their lives. And I want to say thank you to the many thousands of council workers over the years who've made our homes cleaner, greener and safer. Because the past 50 years of Kirklees have been about people, not the institution. It's been about those people who've made differences to their communities in the name of Kirklees Council. And I'm sure every member in this council, whether you've been representing your community for 2 years or 20 years, knows the staff, the council staff, who have gone above and beyond over the years. Over the next few months, I hope we can all take a moment to reflect on the efforts and achievements, and to think about what we can learn from them as we face the next 50 years. But our communities have to be shaped by other people and other groups over the coming years. And I want to celebrate just some of them here tonight. I'd like to celebrate the world-class university which we have on our doorstep that has done thousands of things over the past 5 decades. An outstanding institution in every respect. And tonight, I have to plug that. Members, please go down and see it. It's a fantastic campus. I want to celebrate all those businesses that have spent the past 50 years taking us from the industrial past into the high-tech future. They have laid the foundations of a strong economy with a world-class engineering, advanced textiles and a booming health tech sector. But the backbone of our economy has always been the small family-run businesses. Their hard work from Batley to Birstall has helped us to raise thousands of families, build communities here and across Kirklees. And I want to celebrate our partner organisations, our wonderful NHS colleagues who have saved lives every day for the past 50 years or more. I want to thank our police officers, our firefighters, who have always been there when we needed them, and who have always worked with the council in the spirit of cooperation and in the best interest of local people. But above all, I want to celebrate and thank you, the voluntary groups out there, the community organisations who really represent who we are in our community. It's hard to put into words how much we have contributed over the past 50 years. And they've done it all for no pay, no acclaim. They've done it because they care about their communities. And I want to thank them all and celebrate their immense achievements. So often they've kept going against the odds, whether that's poverty, pandemics or polarisation. There's no doubt that the next 50 years will present us with challenges too. But in the last 50 years, if it tells us anything, it's about the people of Kirklees. And their institutions are resilient and resourceful. That's why I'm optimistic of our future and I'm proud about our past. So tonight I'm looking forward to hearing your reflections, and indeed I do hope positive, but no doubt there'll be some negative, and that'll go on for the next 50 years. But we can learn from others' experiences, and I want to hear about people, groups who deserve our thanks and celebration, and how we take this inspiration from them all to build a better future for Kirklees in the next 50 years. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 2024, a momentous year, and a very important event which happened in 1974 and which has had such a beneficial effect on so many people. A cause for widespread celebration, the 50th anniversary of which I shall celebrate with joy, and as a record of which I keep a fancy certificate at home. Yes, it's my birthday, 50th birthday in October. So you've all got a chance now to save up before and buy me a nice present, haven't you? Mr. Mayor, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I really think we've got very important things to discuss. So just to say very quickly, I'm very proud of the communities I represent and the ward I represent. And I just want to say thank you to the officers over the years that have served this borough, and also to all the elected members that have served this borough over the years for their dedication to their duties. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the opportunity given to the councillors to think about the positive aspects of the communities we represent in Kirklees' 50th year. Why is it important that we mark it in this way? Well, as a milestone in our personal lives, Councillor Hall, 50 is always significant. It's a time we pause to reflect. We think about the things we're proud of, whether it's children or careers or Star Wars model collections, and some of the things as well that didn't go so well. And we try and plan which direction we want to go in the future. And it's how we correct our course. Last Friday, I did a session with a local scout group about basically in council, what have the Romans ever done for us? And I used a numbers guessing game to engage them. And it was great to see them take in the size and variety of what needs to be done on a council level. I covered the children's services with them, social care, housing, refuse, highways, and the numbers ranged from 0 to a gazillion. 0 was the number of defence buildings we have on Kirklees land that we know about. And a gazillion was the number of the dog poo complaints I've received in my career. It was also a good reminder to myself, though, of the size of the undertaking that behind every number and every statistic, there's a life, a child or an old person, or somebody vulnerable, or simply a resident that needs their bins collecting on time. And that in turn reminds us that we're a service. We're not a Victorian patriarch building great works for their own edification, and we're not in a business selling a product, but a service that when we get it right, hardly anybody will notice, but it causes mayhem when we get it wrong. And as Kirklees approaches middle age, it will do us well to remember those priorities for the future. I can point to a couple of things that Liberal Democrats are proud of from their time in administration, if you can remember that. Like the Warm Zone project and being recognised as the best council in the country. I'm sure others will point to their own successes, but again, nobody remembers that work because we got it right. And so it becomes everyone's. It becomes joint ownership for the whole council when something good happens. The importance of those kinds of successes are they are done not in a vacuum, but in a partnership with residents. One of the things that marked Kirklees out as the best in the country at that time was the openness of governance. Recognising that Kirklees is made up of several communities, I've always thought of Kirklees as a bit of a fish pie of a borough. But that was key to getting the public to buy into Kirklees and have that sense of ownership of their own borough. I haven't mentioned area committees yet, but I'm going to. They weren't universally successful, I'll admit, but we are suffering now for not having that close contact with residents. Was it the place partnerships areas? I don't know whether I've got the correct name there. Had a stab at recreating it, but fell by the wayside because of lack of public engagement. We need to build that strength back into what we do here. Without it, we will only ever be tolerated, we won't be fully accepted, and we won't be trusted. Kirklees was born of a Conservative government push to rationalise services and seek out economies of scale, and they were proved right. What has happened over time is that some will have you believe that you can have big councils, but democracy will suffer, or you can have people having their say, but only in smaller councils. Both are patently untrue. We can build in that community level engagement into metropolitan councils if we're not afraid of a bit of hard work and being accountable for our decisions. The financial pressure brought about by the sheer lack of understanding of local government by the current Conservative government has massively muddied up the waters. It has enabled the doublespeak that says in one breath break up Kirklees, while at the same time homogenising large parts of North Yorkshire. Even though there are huge problems at the moment, I still have pride in our communities and in our staff. Groups like Cleckheaton in Bloom, the Food Bank, the Church Lunch Clubs, Cleckheaton Rugby Club, the Chamber of Trade, Friends of the Library, and the list goes on and on. They all work the best with Kirklees support, and that's where our lifeblood is, and that's what keeps us afloat. They're helped by our staff and our managers, and I'll add my thanks to them at this point, who often go above and beyond to support those groups. The local knowledge keeps efforts focused, and the commitment keeps groups going, and that surely has to be the way forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Cooper.
Kirklees doesn't exist. Kirklees Priory, after which our council is named, is situated in Calderdale and was, according to legend, associated with the death of Robin Hood, who robbed from the rich to give to the poor, or progressive taxation, as it is more generally known. I'm much in favour of this fiscal rule. For 50 years, we've had a council which has had a contrived identity with a name chosen as a compromise and a convenience, which, to be fair, has satisfied no one. And any criticism that I have of the institution of Kirklees is not a criticism of the good, dedicated councillors and staff who've worked hard to make the lives of people within its boundaries better. However, whatever the political makeup of the council would be in this area, we would have good people working for us. And so we've got to understand there is a difference between the people and the institution. As a supposedly democratic body, Kirklees falls short. At the last local elections, the ruling party won 43% of the vote, but has 100% of the power. The vast majority of its decisions are taken by 9 councillors in the cabinet, with the other 60 councillors, that's most of us, having no vote on the important decisions that people elect them to address. Ultimately, we need a fair voting system in this country for both local and national elections, but we have parties who rely on an undemocratic system that works for them, rather than voters. Over the years, the Conservative Party have talked about splitting Kirklees along north-south lines into 2 councils. This plays well with some people, but it would lose economies of scale and be more expensive to run. And anyway, we've had a Tory-led government for 14 years, and nothing has happened. No new councils, no Flockton bypass come to that. It just looks like cynical vote-grabbing nonsense that can't be delivered. So how can we make things better? A committee system to make decisions where all Kirklees councillors have a vote on all decisions. That's an idea. It's probably what most people expect happens anyway, but it doesn't. This has been rejected by the council. A committee system to make decisions where all Kirklees... this has been rejected by the council. Labour weren't keen, and neither were the Tory opposition. The status quo for both parties is very comfortable, I suspect. What about new councils, which have a focus on Huddersfield, or Batley, or Colne Valley, or Dewsbury? We don't have to abolish Kirklees to create new town councils with a more local focus. They can raise modest amounts of funds to focus on local priorities. Kirklees Council itself could ask for a governance review to establish these new councils. Let's be realistic, though, the council isn't going to do this. But over 150 new town and parish councils have been created since 1997. It's happened in Bingley. Why not in Huddersfield? For both a committee system and a newly focused town councils, it will take local people organising and working together to make change happen. Under the Local Excellence Act 2011, 5% of local electors can trigger a referendum that can change the way the council is governed, or 7.5% of a referendum to create new town councils. And if more people back these referenda, we can move...
Councillor Cooper, your time has come to an end, unfortunately.
One sentence. Kirklees does exist, but it could be so much better.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. It's a shame that you couldn't celebrate the positive aspects of some of the communities that you're probably proud of, but you did miss that opportunity.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Councillor Anthony Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you'll be glad to know that my my contribution is going to be strictly apolitical. I'd like to shine a light on, celebrate and focus in on the volunteers and community groups that do fantastic work in all our communities. Every day, thousands of people across Kirklees come together time and time again to give their time in supporting each other and providing opportunities for people of all ages and abilities. From youth clubs to sports clubs, faith groups and community groups, the goodwill and hard work of residents who give their time volunteering makes a huge and positive difference to all our communities in Kirklees. It's one of the great joys and privileges of our position as councillors to be able to support the activity of community groups and volunteers within our wards, supported by the wider Kirklees structure. In Lindley, we have some fantastic examples of this community work and volunteering. Lindley Community Group, for example, organise and arrange a host of community events throughout the year, all of which are open to all and free to attend, and bring all parts of our community together in celebration and shared experience. Events such as Lindley Street Party, Lindley Carnival, Lindley 10K, Lindley Junior Run, Clock Tower Open Days, and even down to organising litter picking days and groups, all provide opportunities for volunteers and opportunities that bring us all together and strengthen both pride in our area and our community bonds. It was a great pleasure for the Liberal Democrat councillors to help support the formation of Mount Forum and Community Group. With a small grant received from ward funds to get this group off the ground, they are now a thriving and crucial part of a very small part of our community. And there are many more examples just like that. Our local faith groups also contribute hugely, providing everything from coffee mornings and warm spaces to practical and pastoral support for residents of all and no faith, and enriching our communities in so many ways. During the pandemic, our communities came together. Mutual aid groups sprang up across Kirklees as a first line of support for the most vulnerable in our communities. Mutual aid groups brought out the very best in us. And again, ward councillors were able to provide additional support, again with the backing of the wider Kirklees Council, when required. The community stepped up with the vaccine rollout as well, volunteering as stewards and coming together as a crucial part of the infrastructure to get this country back on track after the pandemic. Local charities, such as the Mayor's Charities, Calderdale and Huddersfield NHS Foundation Trust and the Royal Air Forces Association, provide support and services that otherwise would not be available to our communities. And the hard work and dedication of volunteers and fundraisers is to be welcomed and celebrated. As ward councillors, we can all make a difference in our own communities, providing support and guidance for residents, charities, community groups and volunteer groups. And with the help of small grants from ward funds, this can make a huge difference at street, ward and borough level. I'd like to join colleagues in celebrating the achievements of volunteers, community groups and everybody who gives their time freely for the benefit of others in Lindley and across Kirklees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Addy.
As I'm sure everyone is very proud. Can I step forward? Thank you. This next.
Like everybody is, I'm very sure proud to represent the residents as I am in our valley. It's come so far in 50 years and is always moving forward. It runs right to the edge of the borough and it could be a place where Kirklees peters out, but do come and visit. Yes. As I was saying, I'm very proud to represent the residents of our valley and how far it's come in 50 years. Where it could be petering out at the edge of the borough, please come and visit because you'll very much find it's a place that stands out. A backdrop of beautiful countryside finds classic mill homes and terraces, farmsteads, historic buildings, nestled cheek by jowl with industry, business, art and innovation, flanking the canal, river and rail corridor, which rises to our stunning moorland perimeter. But it's not these wonderful settings that most defines our valley, it's the community it houses. At times defiant and always determined, with the biggest heart that only grows bigger when times are at their toughest. Our community is fabulously resilient and looks after their own, to sound very Yorkshire, so much. But while there is humour about comers in and local rivalries, do not be fooled. The people I live amongst are the most caring, warm and welcoming. They have such a plethora of ways that they bring people together, sports teams, bands, choirs, community groups for young and old and those in need, our wonderful but sadly necessary Colne Valley Help, for example, and even for those who are flourishing, helping them to develop. The people of the valley have faced so many challenges and changes over 5 decades. But they are always rising to these. They are always ready to meet change head on. They've had to be very innovative to meet the challenge of change. And even when they butt heads, it's with their unswerving passion and plain speaking. But where it matters, ultimately, the valley's communities pull together. Keep on looking after and looking out for each other and always pushing forward. And with my fellow Colne Valley councillors, I will always be proud to support our valley's residents and keep us all moving forward together.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. Councillor Ali.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Members of the Council. Well, 50 years is really a landmark and it's only right that we celebrate that. Some of you might be surprised, but myself, just like Councillor Hall, are celebrating that on a personal front. But as a council and as an organisation, I think it's a milestone that we do commemorate and celebrate. But the question is, how do we do that? And in any organisation, I think it's defined by its people. So the real heroes of Kirklees are the Marys, the Christines, the Sues, the Johns, the Abduls, even the Martins. These are the residents who I'm proud to represent in Murfield. These are the residents of Kirklees. They're the ones that on a cold Saturday morning, you can see picking up litter around the town centre. They're the ones that clean up our parks and preserve our environment. They're the ones that bake cakes make cups of tea that they serve at numerous coffee mornings throughout the churches of Mirfield and as part of Friends of Mirfield Library Group. They are the ones that provide that support and help for the elderly residents. These are the heroes that spend numerous hours fundraising, raising thousands of pounds, giving up numbers of hours as part of Mirfield in Bloom to make our town look beautiful throughout summer and really raise the profile and instill some pride into our town. Not only that, but these are ordinary people, they're ordinary residents. They're the ones that take time to grit their cul-de-sac to ensure their elderly neighbour is able to make their doctor's appointment safely. They're the ones that are ordinary parents that you can see on a cold, dark Friday evening on the football pitches and numerous cricket fields in Mirfield that run out of their own voluntary time, run sports clubs to try and help our youngsters, keep them off their streets and keep them engaged. Not only that, but they're the ones when there's missed bin collections and their elderly next door neighbour hasn't had their bin collected for six weeks, they're the ones that will do tip runs to help them out. So not just that, but they're ordinary residents of Kirklees that take it upon themselves, that come to this chamber to ask those questions, and we know how difficult it is to speak here. They're the ones that present deputations to help save services such as our sports centres, our care homes, and today we've heard our libraries. So these are ordinary folks that are passionate about local services, that work hard. And these are the real heroes of Kirklees. And like all heroes, I believe, in fact I know, they don't want accolade. They don't want me here singing their praises. What they want from their councillors and from this council chamber is to spend valuable time debating on the more pressing issues around the services that matter to them and to their communities.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. It's 5 years now since I became a councillor at Bristol and Birkenshaw, thinking that I was going to serve and realise very quickly that it's the residents, the people with the small businesses that serve the communities better than I would ever aspire to. What I do realise is also that many of them don't really think of themselves as residents of Kirklees. Most, or many, I would say, regard themselves as residents of Bristol or East Bailey or Birkenshaw, and very rarely does the term Kirklees enter vocabulary unless, unfortunately, it's because the bin hasn't been emptied or there's a pothole outside the house, etc. But what I am humbled by on a regular basis is the amount of time, effort and compassion that people have in the local communities that I'd never experienced unless I had been a councillor for this period of time. And for instances, East Bailey, which is a small village, that small that it hasn't even got one shop within the village, but they do have the East Bailey Preservation Society that's got one of the few green, or if it's the only green flag in Kirklees. They look after it themselves. Unfortunately, the only time that they lost the flag was when contract workers sprayed weed killer on the green itself and killed a lot of the grass. But they carry on regardless. Then there's East Bailey Community Sports Association, that with fundraising, they could now train literally hundreds of young women, football, rugby, young men, the same, got good teams, academies. They've got their own sports hall now that they've raised money for and built, all volunteers, all fundraisers, all passionate people about sport and the local community. And then as you go through the ward, there's the volunteers at the library. even that, I'd like to include the CAL staff at Batley Sports and Tennis Centre, who many of them work there more hours than they should. They look after the elderly residents that come in, always with a smile on the face, compassionate to the people that need help as far as physical and mental fitness. And then you go all the way through the rest of the ward, Birstall Trade Association, that's built up from 0 to 70 plus small businesses that meet on a regular basis, fundraising in the local community. They also have their own youth project there that they've started themselves with 20 plus kids on a Wednesday night, that one of the shopkeepers opened their shop after hours for them to have a facility to get together on a weekly basis. The food share at Howden Clough, they go around with vans, collect out-of-date or going out-of-date food from Tesco, Subway, all the other stores in the local area right down to Batley, so people can get groceries on a Thursday evening. All volunteers, all smiles on the faces, and it's a pleasure to watch them on a Thursday evening doing this volunteers work. The training cave, Jack Sunderland and his wife have the training cave in Birstall, helping young men and young women, a lot of them with ASBOs, helping them, keeping them off the street, give them purpose, give them fitness and health. Birstall in Bloom, that makes Birstall look even prettier than it normally does, looking after winter bloom and summer. Again, a full team of volunteers, always happy to do what they can. Same in Birkenshaw. Birkenshaw in Bloom do exactly the same thing, along with Birkenshaw Volunteer Association, that do a lot of the fundraising for fairs, galas, Christmas lights. And so the number of volunteers and volunteer groups go on, which does make you wonder, as far as councillors are concerned, that sometimes one of the few things that you can do is contribute by being the umbilical from council to these people that are doing so much good in the local community. I admire every single one of them and humbled every time I come in contact with them. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to sort of return to perhaps the organisation and talk about where the organisation was 50 years ago and how it's changed over that 50 years. And just to add to Councillor Cooper's point, it was a pin in the map that actually chose the name Kirklees. There were 4 or 5 councillors sitting in a pub together somewhere, and they just took a pin and said, wherever this lands, that's what we'll call it, and it happened to land on Kirklees. It was good that it was Robin Hood's grave, though, I must admit. But just I'd like to take you back to 74 and to 84 as well, because something happened in 84. In those 10 years, it took 10 years to assimilate West Riding Council and all the other little councils, the 11, I think it was, boroughs that made up Kirklees. It took 10 years to assimilate all of that. And there are some people still here working today that will remember that. It wasn't easy. It took a long time and it wasn't easy. But because all those other staff from different authorities came with different cultures, especially the West Riding staff, they were outsiders, weren't they? But there were over 33,000 council houses. We haven't got that many now, have we? There were over 20,000 staff. We haven't got that either. And there were 70 councillors. Well, now we're 72, sorry, and now it's 69. We've only lost 3, but they're still missed. But who can remember those 11 authorities? I mean, Agbrigg. Where's Agbrigg? I mean, I'm sure there's some Cold Valley people here that know and remember Agbrigg, but I never knew where it was, I have to admit. So things have, if I paint a bit more of a picture of the organisation as it was then. In the housing department, Fred, and his name was Fred, used to collect all the money in from the rent collectors each day in cash. They used to come into the office and he would sit there, well, they would sit there and they'd count it all up and he'd reconcile the rent collection at the end of every single day. And it had to be spot on. I once got it 20 quid out. God, I was for the high jump for that one. But there was no computers. There was no email. Staff didn't even have a phone of their own, let alone an extension. No, they had to share phones. They shared tightly packed into offices. Oldgate House. People can't remember Oldgate House, I don't suppose. We had loads of offices in town. Pearl Assurance House, Phase 3, not Civic 3. All those things are now gone. But can you imagine a life now without emails, without computers, without a mobile phone? Gosh, we weren't allowed mobile phones, were we? No. There was no Sainsbury's in town to nip and get your sandwich at lunchtime. There were no coffee shops to have a coffee after work. I think it was just the Wimpy back in '74. And there were no Zoom meetings. This council chamber operated, but we all sat that way, not this way. So things have really changed. If you can, I'm sure some of you can't actually even imagine what it was like 50 years ago, working anywhere, but the organisation was so different. And so I have to, and I shall finish on this point, congratulate all officers and members who over the years have worked to adapt to that change, because Kirklees is a big organisation. We're one of the biggest organisations in the whole of the district. And we have changed. Maybe not quite as fast, and maybe not to the extent that some might, all the cuts that we've also had to suffer, right from '84. It wasn't just in the last 10 years, we've suffered them since 1984. So congratulations to all officers and to members that remember those days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to celebrate the achievements of Murfield. Murfield is geographically in the centre of Kirklees, but it is, always has been, and always will be in front of the other areas throughout its history. Murfield has twice seen a councillor who represented our town become the leader of this council. Their only mistake was they represented the Labour Party. It is a centre for both industry and entrepreneurs, and through their success, philanthropy and benevolence. Murfield is renowned worldwide, thanks to it being the home of the college and community of the Resurrection. And the newly refurbished church there is something I would commend to all as a cathedral for Kirklees. As is often the case, and to paraphrase Matthew's Gospel, this august body is probably celebrated around the world more than their local authority. For example, the work of Trevor Huddleston and Desmond Tutu, who trained there, played significant parts in the shaping of the modern South Africa. On a more modern cultural note, the Reverend Richard Coles, once of the Communards, trained at Murfield, as did the father of the former Prime Minister, Theresa May. Murfield has been central, you thought this was coming, to the area's railway network for over 160 years. Its first railway came in 1840 and a station was opened in April 1845, although unlike Kirklees, it didn't open on the 1st of April. We later had a station centred on a large island platform with an overall roof, facilities including a hotel, buffet and billiard room. This was sadly demolished in the 1980s when Kirklees was our local authority. Worthy of note, Dewsbury didn't have a station until 1848 and Huddersfield didn't fully open until 1850. In current times, Murfield is ahead of these upstarts with our rail service, as it is the only station in Kirklees which has a direct service to London, something which we achieved despite Kirklees, not because of it. In January 2009, Grand Central established their West Riding service, and myself and members of the community began campaigning for a rail halt. At an area committee meeting at Battyford Sporting Club, a community that serves thousands of young people in their sporting achievements, which Kirklees once tried to sell off, a Kirklees officer said it was a nice idea, but would never happen. We had to tell him that that very day myself and the then Mayor of Murfield, Councillor David Pinder, had met Grand Central, who recognised the potential and would be changing their timetables to incorporate Murfield. Not only that, but we'd introduced them to a local business, M&L Badges, who then made all the nameplate and other badges for Grand Central. The direct services started in 2010. Whilst famously, Heckman Dwight Council said people would be able to sleep soundly, you can truly sleep soundly thanks to Murfield, as it is the home of John Cottons, a family company with over 100 years in this community. They produce fillings for the bedding industry, which is one of Kirklees' biggest manufacturing sectors. And they also produce a wide range of pillows and duvets sold under brands in many supermarkets. So you can truly sleep soundly thanks to Murfield. Murfield is at the forefront of community action and support. Murfield in Bloom, which started as a concept for a small group meeting in the historic St Mary's Church, is nationally renowned for the awards it has won, beating all comers at the Yorkshire Awards on a number of occasions, and being chosen to represent not just Kirklees, but Yorkshire at the national judging. And I pay tribute to the great leadership of the redoubtable Ruth Edwards and her team for galvanising our community to take pride in action in their neighbourhoods. We just need Kirklees to deliver on the promise made over 20 years ago to remediate the former landfill I saw on Taylor Hall Lane in Murfield. Murfield residents have for many years risen to the challenge of defending our town and community from rapacious developers and unscrupulous acts, such as the Labour idea of producing a link road through Kirklees, which would have affected Murfield greatly. Surprisingly, they are often at odds with Kirklees Council, whose unitary plan and local plan sacrifice green fields with no thought for the provision of infrastructure to mitigate it. The informed and robust actions by the Murfield community were commended by a planning inspector recently and probably saved the council from a ward of costs against it. As the planning inspector said, so whilst I have found that the council behaved unreasonably...
Councillor Ball, can you conclude, please?
Certainly, Mr Mayor. Whilst the council behaved unreasonably, the interested parties' representations mean I will not award costs. To dispel the myth that Councillor Pattison made, like the myth of Robin Hood, on the 2nd of June 1972, the Joint Consultative Committee appointed a subcommittee to draw up a list of 5 or 6 names for a suitable name which would be chosen by ballot at the next meeting. So they didn't throw a dart at the wall, they didn't stick a pin in it, it was a commercial decision. At the same meeting, Mr Mayor, it said the temporary headquarters would be in Huddersfield.
Councillor Bolt, unfortunately your time has ended. Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Sokal.
Mayor, being a councillor for the last 35 years, I feel proud myself to celebrate 50 years of Kirklees councils. Councillor Martin Bolt is right to say first leader of the Kirklees council was Tom McGahey, who was councillor from Murfield, with some member, but I don't know. Then he was elected, I think, European Parliament, He done a good work. Then in 1986, when one of the very respectable Labour Party leader, Councillor John Harman, he was elected councillor of the Kirklees Council, and he been 13-year council when he, I think, resigned in 1999, I remember. During the Councillor John Harman's, Labour group achieved a lot. That time, Huddersfield used to be very derelict town centre, again in Dewsbury, Huddersfield and Dewsbury and others. John Harman done a great job. He built the new stadium. We used to have very old Leeds football club on Leeds Road, where is now B&Q and other units. We moved to stadium. It was hard work mainly by John Harman. He was committed to this one. Then we have a King's Gate in Huddersfield. We used to be that part of the town centre. It used to be very old buildings, and they were owned by individual people who was refusing to sell those buildings to the Kirklees Council. John Harman took them to the Secretary of State. We got the order to buy the building. He changed the map of the Huddersfield by building King's Gate. Then we have a new Sainsbury. Yeah. Then we had a Asda. I remember I was on the planning committee, Huddersfield planning committee, when the new Shorehead Sainsbury application come up. And we have a Labour councillor, his name was John Marner, Jack Marner, they call John Marner, very long time. So he said, I won't support the Shorehead Sainsbury unless they do the all-around stone work. So we refused the application, or we didn't go through. And Sainsbury bosses said, no, this is our design all over England. We can't use the stone. But he said, no, this Sainsbury will be on my dead body. So what happened? John Harman took it to the owner of the Sainsbury. I don't know, he was Lord Sainsbury or someone. Anyway, he persuaded to, and we got the Sainsbury on here. So then we had Labour administration again. Now which we going, been under the Mahbub Khan. Then he was Devashir. Then Shabir Pandor. Now he's our current leader, Kathy Scott. Yeah, we are changing again. We are working again. We have a Huddersfield blueprint. We have a Dewsbury regeneration. We are investing a lot of money in other towns like Homeforth, Bartley, and Hickman White. Yeah, we have seen a lot of development going on there. Then we have a Huddersfield Leisure Centre, brand new building right on the prominent place on the Ring Road. We got a Spin Valley swimming pool. So we feel proud of that. So what I mean, we have seen in the last 35 years, I've seen lot of achievement under our Kirklees Council. I know that there was a short time between 2000 when he was a Lib Dem and Tory party coalition administration. Now we are back. So I feel, Mr. Mayor, I feel very proud being a part of this Kirklees celebrating 50th anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal, who is sponsored by Sainsbury's, I think, this evening. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I'm going to say kind of whatever Mohan said, because that's amazing stuff. That's history that some of us in here don't even recall, really, isn't it? I was going to offer some birthday congratulations to Councillor Hall. I turn 50 next year, so that 50 thing definitely resonates with me. But I'm grateful to Councillor Lawson for clearing up any confusion that I had around 50 being middle-aged. I thought I was kind of coming to the end of middle age and entering some kind of new era, but I'll take 50 as being middle-aged. That's quite positive, really. We've covered a lot of bases, haven't we? I think on a personal note, I can't speak today without remembering 1978 when my dad was elected as a Labour councillor for this ward. I remember running through this chamber as a 2-year-old, toddling around. I don't remember it so much. I'm told about it. I have memories a bit further down the line when the chamber looked very different to this. Dewsbury, in particular, Dewsbury West has got a whole host of volunteers and groups, much like other wards as well, who are so embedded in the community and really help members of the public and help us as councillors as well to do some of the work we do. The people that don't want to be thanked and they don't want to be paid for it, they just do it quietly via a phone call, via a knock at the door, really going above and beyond what you'd expect of a kind of regular member of the public to do, really. And we're really grateful for that, because in the end what they're doing is just helping out the public, of which there's lots to do. There's obviously many people know my background is in sport, so I can't speak on a topic like this without mentioning Dewsbury West under-14s. The lad locally known as Giri, Jangir is his formal name, been pretty much running that football club for a number of years, volunteering his own spare time to deliver football sessions, for young boys and girls for a number of years now, giving them constructive things to do to keep them off the streets. The same at Dewsbury Celtic. I have to mention Michelle Huntington out of the number of volunteers at Dewsbury Celtic, and Peter Charlesworth over at Dewsbury Moor Rugby Club as well. These people have been around for decades, picking up the baton from other volunteers at other sports clubs who've done exactly the same. And really, that's the overarching benefit for our ward, is the number of volunteers that we have delivering activities for young people. It's happening in Dewsbury South, it's happening in Dewsbury East as well. And it's really proud, isn't it, to have that rich sporting history, because without that sporting history delivered to us from Huddersfield Town or the Giants or the Bulldogs or the Rams, these amateur clubs wouldn't exist. And if these amateur clubs wouldn't exist, then there'd be very little for young people to have done over the last 40, 50, 60 years. But I also wanted to pay tribute to some former officers that really, again, went above and beyond to support young people, particularly in Dewsbury, in leadership in community sports and sports development. Out of many names, I can remember two. One, sadly, is no longer with us, that's Dave Morby. And the other was Andy Chataway. And I remember going on sports camps and leadership camps into Wales, into Scotland with Dave and Andy. And they really, not just me, but a number of young people in Dewsbury and Batley, they were really crucial in our lives. You know, they really helped to steer us into being local leaders. And for us, it was sport, and that's what we took into our communities. So it's important that in 50 years of the council, I'm sure there's clearly lots of other officers that really stand out as well. But I just want to particularly mention the above and beyond the call of duty type of work that many officers do, particularly Dave and particularly Andy, because there's a couple more names as well, because what they did was people that I used to work with, Andrew Carden, Graham Bruce and Vicky Bruce, are now senior managers within this council that learned from the Andys and the Daves of the world. And even Dave's daughter, who was a leisure services employee, is now a lecturer at Leeds Beckett. So we've got some really, really good officers still, some really excellent officers that really deliver for young people in ways that we can't even comprehend, because it's happening every day in local communities without us even realising it. And they're just a few names, but I'm sure there's many others as well. So, yes, well done, Kirklees. I'll be right behind you at 50 next year. Let's talk up the area. Let's talk up our towns. Contrary to what some people think, Kirklees is a great place. I've enjoyed living here all my life. I'm sure many of you have as well. And let's talk up the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. Councillor Bell.
Could I move the motion using paragraph 50?
We've got this item finished at 5 past.
3 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
8:03. We did
7:03. Has anybody second that?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favour? David, how are you? Those against? Okay, that's not carried. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, in the spirit of thanking people, I'd like to thank the volunteers and the communities of Owen Valley North, from the litter pickers to the festival organisers, but to name them all, to be honest, I'd be here for an eternity, and I'm already above 50, so you don't want that. Owen Valley North is a fantastic area full of natural beauty, culture, heritage, and but most of all, the most amazing community spirit that you could imagine. It has so much to be proud of and so much to look forward to. And by that, I mean things that will hopefully happen, like maybe getting a regular refuse collection. That would be quite nice. It's a place where you can enjoy the best of both worlds, the rural charm of the countryside and the urban amenities of the nearby towns. There is stunning landscapes, there are vibrant villages such as Honley, Brockles and Meltham, each with their own character and identity. Owen Valley North is also a place where you can thrive and prosper, and that's with thanks to the residents, the community groups and the volunteers for all their hard work and initiative ideas. There's a diverse and dynamic economy with sectors ranging from agriculture and manufacturing to tourism, and not forgetting David Brown's, just to go on with from Martin. There is a strong, resilient community with, as I've said before, many groups and organisations that all support each other and work together for the common good. There is a rich culture with events and festivals that celebrate the heritage and showcase Home Valley North. It's an area where it can stand on its own 2 feet, and it's already demonstrated that many times. So I believe that Home Valley North still be a fantastic place to live, work, play and visit for everyone, and will remain so in the future. And to be honest, that's despite 50 years of Kirklees. Because the community and the residents are proud of their area and they do so much for their area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. Councillor Marchington.
Well, thank you. The roots of Jubilee, 50 years, it wasn't primarily about celebration. It was an opportunity to reflect, refresh and reset. And perhaps we ought to do that more often as we move on. You know, look at what's happened in the past, see what's happening in the present, and have a vision for the future. My perception of Kirklees is it's always, as a council, it's always been at its best when it's worked with people and communities in an enabling role. And I think as we celebrate the communities that we all represent collectively and individually as councillors, I think that's a really worthwhile thing to think. And there are some brilliant things happening in this area with in the places and because of the people. And I just want to reflect and celebrate the place that I represent, the Goka ward and its diverse communities, but also the opportunities we've had to celebrate some fantastic stuff that's happened across the borough as well. I think it's amazing that, I know it's an artificial construct, but we are still the third largest manufacturing district in the whole of the country. We do make stuff, and I know that when we used to have the Picture of Kirklees events, I was amazed about how much, you know, we used to get some of the older councillors and all their experiences. We don't make stuff anymore. And it wasn't true. We did make a lot of stuff, and other people in other wards will do that. But in our ward, we have cutting-edge textiles. Wooltex is a thriving business, an expanding business. Actually, it's recently expanded into the Linley ward. Pennine Textile Recycling is just an amazing local business, and hopefully it's providing fillings for John Cotton over in Murfield. Trojan Plastics, it's an interesting place in terms of, but actually it's been there for a long time, the whole of the life of Kirklees, and it's a significant manufacturer and exporter throughout Europe. And the world, and Drake's Fibres, I think it's now, it was a part of Coulter's and everything. That was for a long time the only working mill in Goka in our ward, because the person who worked there, James Haig, was an industrial chemist, and he developed a synthetic fibre. So it wasn't wool textiles, it was modern cutting-edge textiles, and that's kept it going for a long time. And the people who founded those businesses, worked in those businesses, are to be celebrated. I know and other colleagues have celebrated what's happening in the Colne Valley. The people who the council's been able to work with, and I'm going to cut across into the whole of the geographical Colne Valley, that's the Colne Valley ward and Goka ward as well. The Colne Valley Tree Society, if there's a spot, spot where they haven't planted a tree in the last 50 years, 56 years, I'd be surprised. Walkers Are Welcome. Was again a Colne Valley initiative, and the council enabled that. The Colne Valley Museum, situated in Goka, the council was in a position to support the purchase of what was the old chip shop to complete the whole of that building, and support the National Heritage Lottery bid, which enabled that. And that's but the heart of that, it's a work with the local people who dress up in the sort of Victorian costume, show people how to weave, make clogs, bake bread, and all of that. They were the focus that the council could help. Milnesbridge Village Hall, it's a very small scale group, but the council has been able to help them, and we still can do that to much more limited extent, and they're worth celebrating. And the Go Killyleagh Environment Group, Go Killyleagh Day, that was, the council had an issue about, we were a leader in community cohesion and involved with the Institute for Community Cohesion, and that was born out of difficulties that we have, but it was amazing, all the place surveys that Kirklees did, it was amazing how people didn't necessarily like Kirklees.
Councillor Marchington, your time is nearly up.
I've got 30 seconds or a minute.
45.
45, that's fine. So there are things, it's that working with. And again, I think one of the largest examples of our wards is the Longwood Village Group, where they were struggling to keep a community building going, but the council managed to work with them. So I think as we commemorate and reflect on Kirklees, that statement that we say, diversity is a strength from the Peak District through to the West Riding conurbation, and we should see that as a strength. It's people, we should celebrate the people who live here, and we should continue, hopefully for the next 50 years, enabling people to do the best that they can. And that is something worth reflecting on and celebrating. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. I would like, if we are all agreed, under Council Procedure Rule 1824, the time permitted under 22 and 23 of this rule may be extended at the discretion of the Mayor in consultation with the Chief Executive. I've had a consultation with the Chief Executive. I'd like to extend it to 8:15 or just beyond. We can get through the rest of the names that are on here if we use 2 minutes each. So if we're going to be fair and try and get it done as quickly as we can, everybody will get the opportunity to speak, if we're okay with that. Yeah. Who's next? Councillor Amanda Pinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like a couple of people in this chamber, I'm due to turn 50. So 50 is a fantastic milestone, and I feel really special for reaching this important age. I think today's been really interesting listening to all the history, the wealth of history about Kirklees. And I really hope my dad's watching today, because he's such a lover of history, especially in terms of Kirklees. And he's always telling me about the changes, particularly over the last 50 years. He talks about the corporation, the Huddersfield Corporation, and how things have changed since then. But Mr. Mayor, what I want to celebrate in particular is about the Windrush generation. The period when people from the Caribbean, people from Asia, and people from the African nations came to the UK, came to areas like Kirklees to help rebuild the country after the Second World War, working in industries like transport, like in the mills, setting up businesses, and how these communities made a difference to Kirklees. And I really, really want to celebrate that, because we know that difference, diversity, multiculturalism is so important to a place like Kirklees. So I really want to talk about that. And also at a time as well, a little bit before the 50 years, when these communities were met with no dogs, no blacks, no Irish. Very, very difficult time for them. But I think it's important to recognise that and celebrate the changes that have taken place over periods of time. And these communities have thrived, and they've been valuable members, valuable community members in Kirklees. So I'm proud of these communities. I'm proud of the work that they've done, the impact they've made, and how significant they've been to Kirklees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had a lot of talk this evening about 50-year milestones. I'd love to be able to claim it was my 50th this year, but sadly, that's well gone. But I'd like to talk about another 50-year milestone. When Kirklees was created, we also created a range of parish councils as well, parish councils and town councils. But what I'd like to talk about today is an individual, and that's Councillor Jimmy Paxton of Flockton. Jimmy's actually been a parish councillor since inception in 1974. So he's been representing his village for 50 years this year. And I think that, I think all I'm going to ask you all, let's have a little thank you for Jim. You know, I'd love to think some of us in the room here today might achieve 50 years of public service like that. Not many of us, but that's all. I'm not going to talk about my community at all. I just think it was important that I raised that today and said, you know, that's an example of a true public servant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Richard Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will try and be brief in the spirit of your comments earlier. I think we have heard some probably negative comments from certain quarters, and I'm not necessarily in disagreement with all of them, but I think for this conversation we need to recognise the positives. And so whatever our views or what we hear about the negatives of Kirklees, I think generally we're all pretty proud of the places we represent. I'm certainly proud of the Kirkburton ward that I represent. It's probably unique in Kirklees in respect of it's a collection of small villages. There isn't really one village that's a focal point, except for perhaps the village of Kirkburton where it gets its name. But even then, it's not necessarily Shepley, says John, but that's not true. We all know that. But I think really what we also need to recognise is the number, and it has been said before, that the people that make up the communities that we represent. You know, there are so many different community groups. There are 9 or 10 villages, depending on what you class as a village, and we have one that's sort of split. So, but each one of them has a church group, a village association, a community group, a Facebook page, and there are people in environmental groups, there are scout groups, there are football clubs. I believe the Lepton Highlanders are actually at the top of Division 1 in Huddersfield now in certain age categories, which is a really good achievement. So there are an awful lot of people doing an awful lot of good stuff. John and I have been to help clear out a former colliery in Grange Moor. I think we're both going next week to plant some trees in Shelley. And all this stuff is people actually in the community themselves are doing this. This is just us lending a hand. And these people are doing this on their own time, without any payment. And I think it's really worth recognising that these people across Kirklees, not just in my ward, across Kirklees, we've heard all the different stories about everyone else's area. There are loads of good people around here. I mean, I was born in Huddersfield just a little bit before 1974, but not very much. And you know, I've lived around here most of my life. Went away a couple of times and came back. And I think really the other thing I'd like to say is I've been a councillor for almost 8 years now. And it's a really large organisation, is Kirklees. And the officers I've met, you know, probably 1 or 2 I would suggest have not necessarily fallen into the category, but 99.99% of the people I've met as Kirklees employees have been really, really helpful. You know, and I've really not had any problems. In an organisation this size, it's quite remarkable actually, the number of people that I've interacted with that I've thought, you know, they really are doing a good job, they're trying their best. And I'm going to leave it at that because I know that we've not got...
Thank you. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you. I'm slightly older than Kirklees, but Kirklees is all I've ever really known. As an institution, I don't think it's particularly popular, and there's very little connection to it in terms of identity. I think what there really is diverse communities all across our area, and collectively they make a great place to live. I'd really like to celebrate the efforts of our staff and our residents. All our communities have well-established sports and social and community groups. In more recent years, they've probably been joined by environmental groups, and in fairly recent years, again, there've been new groups that have had to come in through necessity, perhaps groups that we would wish we didn't need. Groups like food banks and campaigns against cuts and closures, and friends groups that had to form to help support and maintain public services. My one big regret is that we've lost those area committees that kind of perhaps were much closer to the real communities that make up Kirklees. So whether it's an area or a district or a place, I really regret the fact that we don't have those anymore. Especially so because of the funding and support that they could give to all those community groups. I'm not sure whether everybody knows, but back on the campaign trail, I've seen a flyer from my local MP talking about splitting Kirklees again. 14 years of empty promises about splitting it. It's so cynical and dishonest. It's just, I just find it so inappropriate when all he needs to do is ask the Secretary of State, one of his colleagues, will we split Kirklees, and he can get on.
Thank you, Councillor Graves. That was most enlightening. Councillor Anwar.
First of all, I want to start off by congratulations on Kirklees reaching the milestone of 50 years. To everyone in this chamber, you all have been part of making Kirklees great. And I want to tell you a bit about myself. My grandfather was in World War II. In 1956, he reached a town called of Dewsbury, lived on the hills of Westtown, and my father followed in suit in 1966. And when my mother arrived in 1980, we moved to a street called Lee Road. We were the first ethnic minority on that street, and we were welcomed by the people of Ravensthorpe with open arms. I never ever experienced racism in my childhood. I absolutely enjoyed and adored my neighbours. Mrs. Molly, she used to have a big dog we used to tease all the time. And it's councillors that make these towns and villages great. And until me getting elected 2 years ago, I thought this job was easy. But since being elected, I found out the truths from my predecessor, Mumtaz, who taught me a lot since I was growing up. We used to have local community gatherings, meetings, splash and all that. I think people at my age group, I mean, I'm only 33, even though I look 60, I'm not. So it's been a great pleasure for these past 2 years serving Kirklees, and I'm going to continue serving the residents of Kirklees. It's the residents that make this great borough of Kirklees great. And there's people from all walks of life here. No matter what religion, creed, colour you may belong to, but it's everyone that makes Kirklees great today to live in. And this is my home. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anwar. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe I'm the last speaker. Oh, there's another one. Mr. Mayor, we've had lots of speakers. We've had much to celebrate, and particularly the volunteers. And I'm going to be very brief. I'd like to mention a chap called Dougie Heard. Dougie Heard has been the secretary, until quite recently, of Shawcross Boys Club since 1947. So add it up, it's 70-odd years. What a guy. Thousands of children, yes, since 1947. Thousands of children have gone through Shawcross Boys Club, and many of those have turned professional because rugby league, as we all know, is a fantastic game, and with lots of players. By the way, the president is living in Australia now. He was transferred to Penrith. You all know his name? Do you remember? Commentator on Sky.
Still no either.
No. Anyway, I stood up to say about, I won't go into the history of Shawcross Boys Club. I just want to celebrate the fact that he must be the longest volunteer in Kirklees Council, 1947. And there's much to celebrate in that fact.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as we mark 50 years of Kirklees Council being in existence, I'm pleased to say I'm actually 7 years younger than Kirklees Council, which obviously I know you find hard to believe, but I am. In terms of the, we've heard lots of comments tonight in this debate, and I concur with many of them, including those made by my ward colleague, Councillor Smith. In my own ward of Lindley, we've got some fantastic volunteer groups, Lindley community groups being mentioned, we've got the Mount Forum that's been mentioned, but I'd also want to pay tribute to Growing Focal, in particular Chrissy Parker, who has put together a group there that does fantastic work with regards to getting isolated people into growing vegetables and bringing the community together, which is absolutely fantastic. But aside from all of the great work that a lot of community groups are doing in Kirklees, it's been alluded to by Councillor Greaves and others about the administrative nature of Kirklees and how many people across the borough from the north to the south are feeling somewhat disconnected. Councillor Anwar is not in the room, but his new friend, George Galloway, when he was campaigning at the Batley and Spen by-election, he said, and he was, well, I was there, but he didn't bump into me. When he was campaigning at the Batley and Spen by-election, what he said was, he said, the people of Batley and Spen, they think it's like Paris in Huddersfield, compared to Huddersfield. They think it's like Paris, and they think in the North Kirklees that it genuinely is. There's a perception that Huddersfield is like Paris. We joke, but that is the perception. It's the same on the south side of Kirklees, that Dewsbury gets all the money. So with this disconnection in mind, is it any wonder that there's discussion, Councillor Greaves, about splitting Kirklees? It's actually something that a lot of residents are talking to us about on the doorstep. But just to wrap up, and obviously just to say that all three parties have had control of this council since 1974. I don't want to make it into party politicals, but we do really need to give some serious consideration to how we represent residents in terms of whether we split Kirklees or rebrand it to better reflect residents' needs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. And finally, Councillor Kath Pinnock.
Thank you very much, Mayor. 100 years ago or more, the government decided foolishly to build a grammar school in Heptendwike. And the good people of Clackheaton said, oh, I'm not having that, and raised the money from businesses and local residents. 6p was one of the contributions towards Wycliffe Mount Grammar School as it was then. Going forward a bit, when the government decided that Bradford Waterworks would take over Spenborough Waterworks, Spenborough Council said, hey, we're not having that. Well, where's the cash for it? We've built it, where's the money? Went to the High Court, won the case, got the money, built Spen Pool. When Amazon came along, we're going forward a bit, and they said, we're going to build this overdevelopment in Clackheaton. The folks said, up with this, we will not put, and is one of the only towns in the whole of England, I think, to give Amazon the push. So the message for the council is, don't mess with Clackheaton. we don't lose our battles. We've got a new pool we battled for. We've saved our library. We will battle and we will win. So, and that's a great community with great local community groups, of which one is the Folk Festival, which is nationally renowned, in fact internationally renowned, for instance. And that's why we need our temporary town hall, I noticed was said, to turn into an open town hall, Councillor Turner. And the last point I want to make, a bit more serious really, is our models of organisation of Kirklees is as a challenge with when you've got disparate towns and villages to run. So there has got to be a way that disparity and diversity is recognised without trying to force a single centre model onto our very dispersed and proud areas of our borough. Now, I know that's a challenge, I accept that, with the financial challenges that are, but somehow, with the innovation and energy that's within our community groups that we've heard, and with a council leadership that is determined to listen, I think it can be done, and I look forward to it being done.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock, and thank you all for your contributions to the key discussion. We now move to item 10, written questions. To the Leader, Cabinet Members, Chairs of Committees, nominated spokespersons. A written list of the questions have been circulated. I will now invite members to ask their question in turn. The appropriate member will then respond. One supplementary question to each submitted question is permitted, and 30 minutes in total is permitted for this item. Councillor Taylor. Sorry, I don't remember telling everybody to go or anything.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's a question to Councillor Crook. How important to this administration is the safety of children when walking to school?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And I'm particularly delighted to be answering a question. It feels particularly fitting to be answering a question about our children and our future as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of our magnificent Kirklees Council. The safety of children when walking to school, or travelling in any mode for that matter, is absolutely a priority for this administration and for me personally as a parent with 2 children at schools in Kirklees. I think the focus needs to be on car use reduction as well as on personal safety training, so that children are made safer in the immediate sense, but also in terms of leading healthier, more productive and more independent and longer lives. As a highways service, we've invested in this by adding 4 additional safe and active travel officers to provide educational training and encourage more children and their adults, by the way, to walk, cycle or scoot to school. And it's worth noting that pedestrian training was provided to an impressive 4,847 children between April and December last year, with a further 6,500 receiving bikeability training and 1,360 older children receiving theatre and education training. In addition, officers support the Mode Shift programme to encourage reduced car use, and at the 62 of our schools that have signed up to this so far, it's resulted in a 6.3% reduction in car use. This represents a health and a safety improvement and also a meaningful reduction in our collective carbon footprint. We also have school street pilots and outline approval from Wicker for a £900,000 funding bid to help implement speed limit review recommendations around 36 of our schools. I hope you agree this is a significant investment of effort and resource and speaks to an absolute commitment to the safety of our children and to a progressive and forward-looking strategy to continue to improve safety over time.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Crook, for your response. The reason I asked this question is a specific issue that we have at one of the schools in my patch at Shepley, which is a cul-de-sac, the road that goes up to the school. We used ward funds to put double yellow lines in to stop cars from parking, which was putting children at risk when they're, entering school. But parents are still parking there. I asked the council to do some parking enforcement, only to be told that the parking enforcement officers don't start work till 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'm asking him if he can take that away and look at it. I don't expect an answer tonight, but can he take away that and look at it? Because obviously we need that help. But if we're not working to the hours, by 9 o'clock all the children are in school, it's too late. We need to make sure that we're having some way that we can support the schools at the times they need it, not just 9 to 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Crook.
Thanks very much, Councillor Taylor, for bringing that to my attention. Absolutely, we need to ensure enforcement of illegal and dangerous parking around schools, and if there are double yellow lines there, then it is an enforcement matter for Kirklees. So I will take that away and get back to you with a response. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's a question to Councillor Pervez. I couldn't see where you were. Building resilient communities is an aspiration I'm sure we all support. What is the council doing to make it easier for communities to do things for themselves and not get in the way?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Taylor, for the question. The places where we live really matter to all of us, and it's important community are resilient to get together difficult times. It would be impossible to give every example, but here are some examples. Firstly, everyday place-based services like libraries, Community Plus and community centres help communities do things for themselves. Secondly, we're investing in towns, creating opportunities for communities like the Dewsbury Arcade that will be the first community-run shopping centre in the UK. Lastly, let's remember all the work we do in our wards as councillors. We play important leadership roles. Every day we help communities connect to the information and resources they need. I am very proud of the work we do at the Ravensthorpe Community Centre in my ward, and I'm sure you are proud of your work, Councillor Taylor, in your ward. So yes, helping communities is an aspiration we share.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, supplementary.
Thank you very much for that answer. The reason I asked that question in that way is I've got two examples I'm going to very quickly mention now where I'm trying to help my community groups do things for themselves and the council is getting in the way. One is one of the football pitches in my patch, the changing rooms, the tap leaks, the showers don't work properly. The club that rent the place come forward and said they've got a plumber that works for them, they'll do the work themselves. We can't get Kirklees to let them, but also we can't get Kirklees to repair it either. And the second one, Burton Environment Group do great work in Kirkburton and High Burton looking after our green spaces, are trying to just site a container on land we own to store the equipment they use to maintain our village, to avoid the council having to do it, but they're wanting to charge them money, they're wanting to get a lease signed, they're wanting to get the group to give commitments of various types about the amount of funding they have and the amount of insurance they have. And this is for a small group of volunteers that don't really have any funding. So these are examples, and I'm sure other councillors in other areas will have examples themselves about where Kirklees is getting in the way. And I'd ask her and the rest of the Cabinet to just take that away and have a bit of reflection. I've been raising this with everyone I can raise it with, including the poor Chief Executive, but still haven't got ways forward. So we do want to help our communities help ourselves, and at the moment we have to do that because there isn't the funding to everything we'd like to do. But it doesn't help when Kirklees makes it more difficult for communities to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Thank you for raising this issue. So please just send me an email with all the information and I'll look into it.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My third question to Councillor Butt. Since the changes to refuse collection rounds in the autumn, the service for residents has continued to decline. Does Councillor Butt think that the service is fit for purpose? And what has the administration done since we discussed this at December Council to improve the service? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butt.
Again.
Which do you want to listen?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor, unfortunately, I think you're incorrect in your understanding. So last year, the service undertook 99.53% of the collections without any complaint. Last week, this figure was 99.74%. Which is an improvement in the performance. That's actually in terms of absolute numbers, there's 175,000 bins that were collected last week. Now, bearing in mind, this figure includes all inquiries relating to things other than miscollections as well, and both justified and unjustified issues. I would challenge anyone to claim that performance of this level is not good and the service is not fit for purpose. My level of confidence in the service is high. Now, we also do performance monitoring regularly as well. And we also meet every 2 weeks with the service to kind of discuss what's going on and any issues that are happening. And this improvement has come from our teams working with the councillors and the residents. And I want to thank all involved for their hard work and patience on this.
Supplementary, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your response. It sounds a little complacent, if I'm honest. In December, there were a number of members, and I've continued to have problems in specific areas. And the issue I have is not the occasional missed bin, it's the regular missing of the same addresses, week after week after week after week. And I just took one example, I won't mention the name of the street. There's one street that we've been having problems with since the autumn. 2 weeks ago, I was there at the weekend and saw that there were some traffic lights at the end of the road, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, this is going to be another problem. So I contacted the service over the weekend and said, look, you're due to collect the bin on Tuesday. There's traffic lights at the end of the road. Make sure the team know. Let's make sure those bins get collected. Got confirmation on Monday. We briefed the team. The bins will be collected. Guess what? no bins collected. So I'm sorry, yes, there's a lot that is being collected, but there are problem areas, and the communication, both to residents, to councillors, and from the front line to the team that are picking up the complaints, is not good enough, I'm afraid. It isn't fit for purpose, and it needs to improve drastically. So I'm sorry, Councillor, but you're far too complacent about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Butt.
So in terms, in terms of what I said, it's not complacency. It's actually, we are proud of the service. You know, in terms of the numbers that are being dealt with, actually the numbers of missed bin collections are quite small in comparison. However, what I will say is, when there was a glitch in the service, in terms of the computer service in the autumn, and there were a lot of assisted bin collections, etc., and some collections that weren't done. So the computer system had to be uploaded again by hand, which took a lot of time to do. So there was a big backlog on there. But the service worked very, very quickly to try and get around that. I do appreciate that some may have been missed in that time. If you want to send me the details of that particular street, I can have a look at that for you. But I do know that we're not complacent. We are very proud of the service that is done. If you look at the absolute numbers as well, they're testament to themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. As the Cabinet member will recall, I asked 3 questions about the household refuse collection service in my ward of Kirkburton at the last council meeting, 17th of January. It was very complacent then as well. I hope that the Cabinet member will be as appalled as I am to learn that some of my residents, especially in Denby Grange, Lane, Grange Moor, still do not receive a reliable bin collection service. And the reason given for this is that new household refuse collection vehicles are too large to complete the round, although I am informed that smaller vehicles are available. As the Cabinet member responsible for the household waste collection service, what effective steps to ensure that all of my residents receive the service which they are paying through their council tax will the councillor now take?
Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. I've noted and responded to all the councillors' previous questions, and some of them are a mix of questions from last time. I'm more than happy to arrange a separate meeting with you and the service to discuss any remaining concerns in more detail, which I feel would be a more productive approach. Just to also let you know that we also have a new collection van as well, which is 10 inches smaller. So 10 inches is quite substantial, as you'll know. So, that will help alleviate some of your problems. Thank you.
Supplementary, Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, we've got a bit of silence, thank you. Supplementary, only today I was phoned by a wheelchair user who lives with his frail 80-year-old wife in my ward. They have a medical waste container as well as the ordinary bins and are registered for bin assist. Because there is a restricted access to the house, they have not had any refuse collected for 4 weeks. Is this acceptable?
Councillor Butt.
Of course, if they're on an assisted collection, I think I heard you say. There has been a glitch in the system in the autumn that seems to have corrected. But for this particular case, if you want to send me the details, again, I'll have a look at it. But we do try where it is assisted. There is a specific clause for that. But I will have a look at that particular case if you want to send me the details.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Councillor Armour, question 5.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A simple and unequivocal question, to which I would like a straightforward and unambiguous answer. What was the unit cost, including any and all selected optional extras, of each of these new household waste collection vehicles?
Thank you, Councillor Butt.
Okay, so here is a simple and unequivocal, straightforward and unambiguous answer, Councillor Armour. No, that's not it. I have previously provided the councillor with financial information on vehicles, and this is publicly available in our financial reports. We've undertaken competitive tendering, and so there are limits on the information that can be provided without undermining commercial confidentiality of suppliers and prejudicing the council's ability to obtain value for money in future procurements. I can also assure Councillor Armour that we're not in the habit of pimping out our refuse trucks. So they don't come with alloy wheels, they don't come with surround sound, etc. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Supplementary, Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you. I was thinking actually of the South Way facility. I believe that tape measures are readily available in all good DIY stores. Will the Cabinet member arrange for a tape measure to be supplied to those responsible for procurement? Might get the right size.
Councillor Butt. Can I remind colleagues if we can have conversations quietly in here or else go to the other room so that members can listen and respond, and just some common courtesy. Councillor Butt.
I've noted your comments and will respond in due time.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Councillor Armour, question 6.
Didn't get a straight answer there, did I? It's clear to me that the cleansing service does not have an effective protocol for communicating with service users. What will the Cabinet member do to improve this?
Councillor Butt.
Whilst I'm not certain on what basis the council has formed their individual opinion, what I can say is that the service utilises many different communication channels, from social media, web page updates, letters, phone line messages to physically attending site visits. Despite all of this, we are always looking to improve, and we commenced work in November reviewing how we utilise our IT systems to send real-time messages to residents about any issues with their collections, such as parked cars blocking access. We're reviewing missed bins, which are small in number, and the service looks for continuous improvement. You're more than welcome to feed in with your suggestions, Councillor Armour, which I'm sure you will have many.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'm basing the question, if you like.
Sorry, Colin, I can't hear Councillor Armour, and I think other people are struggling as well because there's too many conversations. So if you wish to have a conversation, please leave the room and let others ask their questions and take back these important issues back to their wards and to their residents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm basing this question about lack of efficient communications on the fact that since before Christmas, I have exchanged many emails with the manager of this department, and he has told me that he has not yet consulted or informed any of the residents that are affected by changes to their service and their non-collection. That is a very poor service, do you not think?
Councillor Butt.
As explained before, we're reviewing the collections. They are small in number. The service does look for continuous improvements. Please do feed in, and of course, if you have any specific issues around that, please just let me know, and I'm more than happy to have a look at them for you.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Question 7 from Councillor Greaves will receive a written response. Question 8, Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When will the financial details supporting the introduction of parking charges to villagers be made available?
Councillor Butt.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Greaves. On completion of the statutory consultation as agreed at Cabinet on the 14th of November 2023, a report will be presented to Cabinet local issues. We are yet to confirm what car parks will be chargeable, remain free or otherwise. The report to Cabinet will include financial details.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Supplementary, Councillor Greaves.
Can you tell us when that consultation period for the introduction of parking charges to village car parks will actually start, and how we can engage with that, please?
Thank you. The statutory consultation will begin in February, and the consultation will be advertised, and notices will be placed on parking areas that will be considered for charging.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. Question 9, Councillor Greaves.
When will the Section 106 school funding be released to the Meltham schools?
Councillor Turner.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Councillor Greaves, thanks for the inevitable question on Section 106 money yet again. Just to reiterate, as has been stated several times, it is not possible to give confirmation about whether Section 106 funding will be able to be given to the Meltham schools at this point. As you know from my previous answers, we are in discussions with the developer who will need to agree to an extension of the agreement. These discussions are ongoing.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Supplementary, Councillor Greaves.
The questions will keep on coming until the money does. There's millions in school Section 106 school funding that Kirklees is holding. What ongoing discussions are taking place between Kirklees and all those schools that will be entitled to draw some of that money down? Some of that money's been there for over 5 years. So what are the ongoing discussions so that schools know what the rules are and how they can access that money and what purposes it can be used for?
Again, as has been stated many times, there are ongoing discussions with the Education Department and the schools, and I will reiterate, there is no point building a school classroom where there's no demand for it. That money, whilst it's there, must be used wisely, and the conversations with education and planning continue to grow on.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Question 10, Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is to Councillor Crook, and it's actually come from a resident. What technology is used to inform the winter maintenance team that Kirklees will need to be gritted apart from forecasts?
Thank you, Councillor Crook.
Thanks very much for passing on the question from a resident. In order to monitor weather conditions, Kirklees Highways, through the duty winter maintenance engineer, use both real-time and forecast data from multiple sources. 4 weather stations at different altitudes across the borough, providing data on air temperature, precipitation levels, cloud cover, wind chill, speed and direction, visibility, atmospheric pressure, humidity and current road surface salinity are monitored. Additional remote cameras provide real-time road conditions, and we subscribe to a third-party service for real-time forecast data. All of this provides an intelligence-driven response to maintaining road safety. In addition to this, I'm keen that we go further to improve both efficiency and safety by using heat mapping and other bespoke response differentiation to direct our grit supplies even more intelligently.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Bellamy.
Yes, please. I've lost it now. So, further to that, what temperatures trigger a grit on higher ground, and what temperature would trigger a grit on lower ground?
Sorry?
Councillor Crook, thank you.
Sorry, so when the temperature is predicted to be below 2 degrees on higher ground, we would have the night patrol go out and monitor the conditions on the ground. If the conditions warrant it, then we would trigger a full grit of the network. I can get more detail for you if you need more detail, but you'd need to send me an email and I can respond. There is also detail, of course, on the gritting strategy in the Highways Service document, which I've mentioned before, and which is a fantastic read.
Thank you. Councillor Bellamy, question 11.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Another one about winter. So recently in the Owen Valley North, there were 6 consecutive days of below freezing temperatures, and this was not seen as exceptional weather, meaning grit bins were not refilled. So can you tell the council what exceptional weather would see grit bins refilled? And I know I've already asked you that, but I want another explanation.
Councillor Crook.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bellamy. Exceptional cold weather in this context would be defined responsively by the Operational Service Director, and typically in response to a prolonged period of heavy snow. 6 days below zero without significant snow would not be considered exceptional in a normal winter, although with the impact of climate change, cold weather is becoming less common. However, the winter maintenance budgets do have to support all of the winter programme, including cold weather, flooding and storm response. So despite less cold weather than normal this year and very little snow, which has led to a reduced gritting requirement so far, we have nonetheless had exceptional weather conditions with 10 named storms so far. These have placed enormous pressure on the winter maintenance budgets through tree damage, flooding and so on, and have more than displaced any saving due to the lower than normal gritting requirements. The policy on grit bin refills is an extended period of exceptional weather and also identification of resource to allow additional fills. In order to allow members to use local expertise to decide when additional provision in ward is a priority, I have arranged for a scheme whereby members can allocate resources from their ward budgets to access additional grip bin fills outside of exceptional weather. All members will now have received an email, I hope, detailing this scheme, and I hope this will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Supplementary, Councillor Bellamy.
Yes, thank you. I presume Councillor Crooks is relating to the £133 per fill. So my supplementary to that would be, would they consider looking at other businesses to perhaps look at filling the grip bins? Because we've had offers in Orme Valley North of businesses that said they can do it cheaper. Thank you.
Councillor Crook.
So sometimes private businesses don't have to fulfil the same safety requirements that a council service would have to. I'm aware that your ward colleague has spoken with a local company and has done a good job for his constituents in organising a sponsorship deal. I'm very happy. If you find a company that says they can fill a grip bin cheaper, I'm very happy for you to get the details to me and I can run that. I can discuss that with Service Director and see if there's a possibility for you having a private arrangement in your ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Smith, question 12.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question to the Leader of the Council. Is 50 years of Kirklees a milestone we should be dedicating a key discussion in Council about?
I think it was very well. Oh, sorry, I'm not answering that. Councillor Scott.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Supplementary, Councillor Smith.
Given that this council is in a dire financial position, with staff worried about potential redundancies and services being cut to the bone, would the Leader not agree with me that these meetings would be better spent discussing these failings that the Kirklees Labour Group has presided over for many years now, instead of discussing the Kirklees milestone?
Councillor Scott.
I believe discussing Kirklees milestone is the right thing to do to recognise how our communities are affected, and indeed one of your members tonight actually mentioned how he watched volunteers working on a food bank on the cost of living crisis. So the only thing I can say in response to yours is it's your government lack of funding.
Question 13, Councillor Richard Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As this is the last time we have the opportunity to ask questions before the voters in Kirklees are asked to elect their representatives, please can you give us your view on the state of the services provided by the council that you lead?
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Despite what you're actually saying, we do provide equitable access to services and that are inclusive and effective, despite the lack of funding. Just note that, lack of funding. We are addressing our budgets around the lack of funding, and you've got to actually commend our services for what they are trying to deliver on piecemeal from your government.
Supplementary, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I receive more emails about the number of potholes than almost any other issue. What reassurance can you provide to residents in my ward that this council will start to take these issues seriously?
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I just had a reminder by one of my colleagues. We have, under this administration, invested more and more money than what you ever did. So, under this administration, we've delivered more, despite what you said.
Thank you. Question 14, Councillor Richard Smith.
Let's see if we can calm it down a little bit. Do the residents of Kirkburton Ward receive value for money from this council?
Councillor Scott.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Supplementary, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So when I say value for money, I mean this in its simplest form. So what you receive in return for money paid. So in my ward, many residents pay a vast amount of council tax. I realise that there are members in the Labour group who believe that Denbydale and Kirkburton wards are, and I quote, where all the rich folk live. But there are many of my residents who have made massive sacrifices to own and maintain their own houses, working long hours, forgoing luxuries and holidays, and won't really see themselves as rich. So I would be interested...
Councillor Richard Smith, unfortunately the time is up on this 30 minutes. Unfortunately. So we'll have to move on. Item 13, response to motion, a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. To receive and note the response of the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office to the motion of Council approved on the 17th of January 2024 as to a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The response is there for noting. That concludes this agenda item and this meeting. Thank you all for your attendance, your contributions. Please have a safe journey home. And we've finished on time for Councillor Marchington to get his bus.